ZBA meeting of the Town of Monroe for tonight, April 28th, 2020. We have about 4 items on the agenda, so we'll be here for a while. And please bear with us. This is a new system for all of us, joining the WebEx meeting. So there may be some glitches along the way. We'll try to work this out as smoothly as we can as we go through this meeting. With that said, Noreen, can you do a formal roll call for the board?
Mike Murphy,
Here.
Peter Lewis,
Here.
Kevin Scully,
Here.
Austin Said,
Here.
and Aaron Freed. I believe he will be out tonight. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Noreen.
You're welcome.
Next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance before we get started.
Where's the flag?
Yeah, where's the flag?
You still have to say it.
Oh, yeah, we absolutely are going to say it. So I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
Pledge
to
allegiance
the
to the
flag
flag
to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Thank you. The next order of business is pointing out the fire exit. So you're all in your own homes. House goes on fire, get out.
Liability issues.
911.
Stay away from that.
Okay. So with that takes care of all the administrative steps we had for this evening. We'll roll right into the agenda. The first item on the agenda is the J Squared application for 280A variance. That's, for access to undeveloped public road. And Arden Consulting Engineers was the applicant's representative on this. I don't know if Michael Morgante is on the phone.
Yes.
Here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, Michael. I'll give the floor to you if you want to, go over the particulars of your project, introduce it to the, members of the audience.
I'd be glad to. I'll share my screen at this point. And as I'm doing that, I'd also like to note and thank the Zoning Board of Appeals for finding these avenues, especially the Zoom meetings, for holding these meetings. I know it means a lot to the applicants and the engineers and architects who represent them. So on that note, the project, right as you see it, is located off of Mountain Avenue. Can everybody see my screen right now? I have a PDF up of it, of the site plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Super. So the project is pretty simple in nature. The funny part of this is, as I'm showing this to you guys, my actual Zoom screen is blocking a portion of my PDF, but here we go. So the site's located in the SR15 zone, as you can see here where my mouse is hovering over. We meet all the bulk requirements that are required for a residential dwelling being proposed on this site. The single one thing that this site does not have is frontage on a dedicated town road, as the chairman alluded to before. So what we're actually here for tonight is actually a 280A variance. It's worth noting that this particular lot here was developed previously by this same applicant, Paul Edwards of J Squared. And this entire existing roadway has actually been paved, which is something I know that the ZBA in Monroe and over the years has been interested in applicants performing if they're looking to construct residential dwellings on lots that need a 280A variance. The site will have minor grading, as you can see, that's associated here on the grading plan. We are proposing to connect to the Moodna sewer basin via a little pump chamber here, as we've done for the other lots also on this road and behind us. There'll be an individual drilled well located in the rear portion of the property that maintains separation distances to all the wells and other sanitary facilities. We've got our standard detail sheets and erosion and sediment control plan associated with the project, and typical well details and typical Moodna sewer basin pump chamber details and clean outs and so on and so forth. I'd love to opine on this project more than that, but that's pretty much it. It's a simple project again in nature, and we are simply here before the ZBA at this point for a request for the 280A variance.
The variance is for the.
Wait a minute,
road-
Peter.
No.
Peter, before we go any further, we did not make a motion to open the public hearing.
Oh,
Yeah, you can make that motion, what's called nunc pro tunc, obviously to capture what was in the record. Obviously, it was the board's intent to have the hearing open and capture all what was just said. So is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Second motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who made the second?
Austin side.
Austin.
Thank you, I couldn't hear.
So we're here the variance is for the road frontage, correct?
Correct. That's it.
And everything you just went over, obviously all the planning, that it's not, I mean, that's obviously information for us to know, but it's not necessarily pertinent
Correct.
for this variance. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, just to let you know that you're not granting us a 280A variance and that we cannot then therefore still construct something on the lot. So I was just giving an hearing works, everything else works that's associated with the project. So
Got
just
it.
general overview.
And Mike, you got pictures of this road, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Let me see if I can find them.
Or challenging?
I'll stop sharing my screen at this point
Oh,
if you want, or would you like to
yeah,
share?
yeah.
your
Let me
picture?
see if I could just get to my folders. Here we go. Kingsville J squared. Oop, wrong J squared. ZBA. 2020, back to Seven Springs, channel. J squared, there we go, 280A, photos. Okay, share screen. Oh goodness, it's not giving me, just bear with me a moment. Be right with you. Show all windows. Here we go.
Hey.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing I want to mention, and Michael brought it up also, is that this developer had been before the ZBA probably 2 years ago for a similar application that was located further up the road. And at that time, they were granted the 280A variance. And all they really needed to improve at that time was the roadway in front of the two lots that they were developing, because that's just the way the rules are written. But the developer did the right thing, and he developed the total length of the roadway from his lots all the way at the far end, which were, I believe, 700 or 800 feet up from the intersection. And he paved the entire roadway system out there. So although it is a narrow road, it's a private road. It's been paved. It's got a developed ditch line along the edges for stormwater drainage. So they did do a good job of that. And here we are looking down the road. This is towards the end of the road now. And the other buildings he constructed is probably this grayish building back there. This is a photograph of the lot that they are looking to develop at this time. This is a pile of wood chips. I guess they did some clearing and grubbing out there and placed wood chip pile on the site. And this is just kind of panning across the site. You can see the site is all open. In the background, you can see a silt fence along the bottom edge of the property. This is the neighboring house on the adjacent lot, the little pink building. And that again is just a shot of the open lot that's been cleared. More of the same. Wood chip pile. And okay.
Okay.
So that's That's basically what we have out there. You know, the applicant comes to us with a lot that conforms to all the bulk zoning regulations. The one variance he's asking for is for a driveway on a undeveloped town roadway, but it has been substantially improved by the developer under a previous application. And, you know, with that being said, I'd open it up to questions from any of the other board members.
Seems pretty cut and dry.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So no further discussion by the board members?
So as you may know, on a 280A variance, it's not a traditional variance from a section of the town code. It's a variance from New York State town law, but the same factors, the same 5 factors that apply to the review of an area variance apply to the review of a 280A variance.
Okay.
So what we should do is open it up to the audience. Maybe Chairman Murphy, if you want to take down your
Yes.
photos,
We're
and then I
down.
can better see the screen and see everybody. It
Sure.
might help me. And then if you'd like to maybe open it up to the public and see if there's anybody from the public that'd like to speak. And if you are in the public and would like to speak on this one, see if you could put up your little electronic hand if you know how to do that. And if you don't know how to do that, physically, get your hand up and show us, and we'll eventually get to you until everybody that wants to be heard is heard. So I'm looking, I want to make sure I'm looking at everybody. I don't see any hands up. Is there anybody at all that wants to be heard? Oh, you know what? There's some people that are here only, not by video, only by audio. So for those people, I'm going to go unmute one at a time and ask them if they want to be heard. Or perhaps I can unmute all and just ask them all at once. Give me 1 second. Okay. I've now let's see. I've unmuted everybody, but some people still have their mute button on. I assume that means that they've muted themselves. Is there anybody that I just unmuted that would like to be heard on the application? All right, and I'm going to go, there's 3 people that I see that have muted themselves. I'll quickly unmute each and ask them if I can. I don't think it's letting me. So those people that have muted themselves, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, I don't think anybody from the public would like to be heard. They've been given an opportunity. Oh, is that somebody that's waving there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
You want to state you're just listed as iPhone, so if you'd like to state your name for the record, and so Noreen can take that down.
Paul Egan,
You get cord.
Noreen, if you need any further information, such as his address, or do you usually?
Yes, we need his address.
Yeah, could you state your address, sir?
And then give me,
Ready?
no, and then give me the other end of that.
ready?
Go ahead.
156 Highland
Okay.
Avenue.
Wait, no. Yeah, you put the light on. I need a
Here,
Island Avenue?
telephone charger cord.
Highland.
Okay, I'm getting feedback. I'm sorry, sir.
It's not a problem. 156 Highland, Highland Avenue.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You bet.
So go ahead.
I'm not clear on the process of what exactly is happening. Is this an authorization to build on that lot?
Yes, that is correct. Being this is an undedicated town road, but there is a right-of-way there. they have to get a 280A variance. There have been other lots out on this roadway that have received similar variances in the past. And this developer, previously 2 years ago, came in for a similar variance. He built about 800 linear feet of roadway out there that's in place today. So that additional roadway he built goes past another lot that he's looking for a 280A variance to build
Right.
up the lot.
I heard all of that earlier. That's fine. This is a pretty small lot. And I wonder how you would put a house on that lot. I'm a neighbor. I live, I could throw a rock and hit that property. And I'm concerned about, I don't know, the appearance and whatnot of the area.
Well,
Okay.
I thought it met the bulk requirements, Mike, no?
Yes, it does.
It does.
Okay, so it meets the bulk requirements for a building. Somebody, I mean, obviously they have to come get permits for building a house on
Okay.
that property. That's not necessarily our responsibility as a ZBA. Our responsibility today is to understand that they need a variance because it's of the road footage.
Right. Maybe Mike Morganti can share the plot plan that he's prepared for this site, so we could demonstrate to him by showing the map.
Yep, I'll share my screen again and I'll go over that.
I saw the map. We did the map before, so I've been on this since the beginning. I saw the
I
map.
just thought it might help you, see area-wise how it all fits together and how this lot is consistent with the size of the rest of the lots in the neighborhood. I believe it's a 20,000 square foot lot in a
Correct.
15,000 square foot zoning area. So it's larger than it needs to be by town zoning code.
Okay. So that's all news to me. I don't know how that stuff works. So thank
on
you.
my-
You basically
on-
answered your question.
On Mike's plan, it shows the bulk table requirements. Just if you're interested, it shows you what is required of that piece of property and what it has.
No, that's okay. Pass.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
You're welcome. Thank you for your interest, Paul.
Okay. You all done? Can I mute you back, Mr. Egan?
That's fine. Yes.
Okay. Or is there anybody else that'd like to be heard on this? I don't see any electronic hands. I don't see any waving of hands. I don't see anybody new that's joined. So I think that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do the board members have any further questions?
None.
Okay. All questions being asked and answered at this point, I would like to, would anybody like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Second motion.
Austin side.
Peter, was that you second?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
So that was all four of us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you can discuss the application. You can discuss the 5 factors. You could do that now, and you could vote if you wanted to. You could wait till the next meeting to either discuss it or vote. It's up to you. But I would suggest that if you're going to discuss it, you discuss it in the context of the 5 factors and the
Yes.
balancing test.
All right. So we've heard all the information there is about this application. The 5 factors to be discussed is whether an undesirable change will be produced by the character in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting the variance.
No.
No.
No,
Concur. Whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method.
no,
No.
Yeah, there's only one road leading to the lot. Okay, whether the requested variance is substantial in nature.
No.
no,
No, the road is already out there, and with the length of the road, if everybody else along that road were to develop, probably would be no more than 6 or 8 houses out there. So I think that's fine.
It's not, it's not single.
Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
No.
None.
Okay, and lastly, whether an alleged difficulty is self-created.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hold on. Okay.
Well, okay. So given that, unlike the use variance, the ZBA need not find in favor of the applicant on every one of the above questions. Rather, the ZBA must merely take each one of the factors into account. The ZBA may also decide that a lesser variance or one requested would be appropriate, or may decide that there are alternatives available to the applicant which would not require a variance. And I think, looking at the 5 factors, there's no substantial change to the character of the neighborhood, impacts to the environment. It's going to be substantially in compliance with the look of the rest of the homes in the neighborhood. The only difficulty this lot has is that it's happens to be along a public road that was not approved and accepted by the town of Monroe, although the roadbed does exist. In the last version of this application, we did reach out to the highway superintendent for his opinion on the roadway access, and he concurred that there's no real substantial hardship with building this roadway, and that it would be in the same character as the rest of the roads in that neighborhood up there. Some of the roads up there are just as narrow. Most of them are not as flat and well paved as this road. So I think this application really is consistent with the neighborhood.
Yeah. I agree.
I agree.
So would anybody like to make a motion to entertain granting the 288 variance?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to grant 288 variance for this project.
I'll second the motion.
Was that you, Austin?
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So carried.
Thank you very much tonight, guys. Thanks for the meeting, and stay safe and be well.
Thank you, Mike.
You too.
Same to
Thank you, you too.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you very much also, board.
you're welcome.
You're welcome, Paul.
So now, next up is Eagle View. Who's here on Eagle View so I can unmute you, and then I'll turn it back over to the chairman to start. Okay.
That would be me.
Okay, so I've got Neil Frischberg. I saw you. Looks like, Mr. Frischberg, it looks like you've got multiple screens up.
I have a laptop and a camera at the same time.
Okay.
It's a belts and suspenders thing.
Okay, I'll unmute only one of them so there's no feedback. Is there anybody else?
Okay.
Is that the person also named Saul? Are you?
Yeah, that would be me, and also David Nimako.
Oh yeah, David Nimako. There you go.
There's also a Michael's engine.
Oh, yes, okay. Okay. That's it. Looks like we've got everybody unmuted that should be unmuted on this one, I think. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you to,
Okay. First order of business is to open up the public hearing on this matter of Eagle View Estate subdivision.
I'll make a motion to open up the public for Eagle View subdivision.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Austin and Kevin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So carried. Who will be speaking for the applicant first?
I will, Neil Frischberg.
Good evening, Neil.
Okay, so, as you may recall, Eagle View applied to the planning board for a 3-lot subdivision. David D'Amico represented Eagle View's estate as the architect, and the planning board in the main approved the 3-lot subdivision. However, while approving the subdivision, they didn't like the way the lot line was initially drawn. They wanted a straight lot line. And as a result, lot 61 is arguably undersized. So they required a referral to the ZBA. The Eagle View also spoke to the building inspector to determine what was the lot area. And in other words, how does the building inspector view what the lot area should be? So the building inspector, by letter dated January 30, 2020, determined that the lot coverage included these permeable pavers, as well as the private road. So as a result, Eagles View needs an area variance because they are basically undersized. Now, so the first issue that we appealed, that Eagle View appealed, was whether or not permeable pavers constitute a portion of the lot coverage. We argue that they do not, because they can infiltrate rainfall and do not constitute compacted surfaces. And in that regard, we have asked Michael Zengen, who's somewhat of an expert on permeable pavers, to come and enlighten it. And if I can do a bit of a Q&A with Mr. Zengen, if that's okay with you.
What are his credentials?
Mr. Zengen, tell me your credentials, please.
Well, I've worked for Unilock Paving Stones and Retaining Walls for 27 years and have done, I would say, tens of millions of square feet of pavers throughout the Hudson Valley, probably 25% of which are permeable. That's a very popular solution for projects. So I think my work with the company speaks to my credentials.
Okay. And do you have any training regarding permeable pavers?
Yeah, I've worked with the ICPI, which is a national organization for paving stones. And in fact, I actually teach most of the classes for our customers for Unilock. So I've been trained and I'm also the trainer.
Okay. And have you installed them?
I oversee all the projects that get put in by private contractors. I mean, I've done some of it obviously myself through the years, but for the most part, we install through our authorized contractors.
All right. So one of the issues in this case, before is whether or not these permeable pavers will compact the soil. And do you have an opinion as to whether it would compact the soil?
My opinion is that it will not compact the soil. In fact, we recommend that the subgrade is not compacted during the installation so that it promotes free drainage through the paving stone itself, through the gravel area underneath the pavers, and then ultimately we want it to go back into the ground. So we encourage the contractors not to compact the subgrade during the installation.
Okay. And when you say these are permeable pavers, what does exactly that mean?
Okay, so permeable pavers, in a sense, the actual paver itself is not permeable, but the system is. And what I mean by that is there's a slight joint width between the pavers, about 7 millimeters. And that allows for any of the rainwater that hits the surface will go all the way down through those joint lines, down into the gravel and down into the subgrade. And we can achieve zero runoff with this system. I'll just tell a quick example so that everybody can have a visual. I know it's difficult on the Zoom meeting. But if I hypothetically had a 12-foot deep swimming pool and I could pave the bottom of the pool in my 5x10 Eco Priora paver, which is what we're proposing to use, with that 7mm joint. If I could hypothetically hoist that pool in the air, pull the steel plate out from beneath, I could drain that entire 12-foot pool in 1 hour. So obviously, we're not ever going to have a rainstorm that's that significant. I just wanted to illustrate that. Think of the pavers as one giant surface drain, and that we could take up to 140 some odd inches of rainwater in an hour. Then after that, the stormwater would pass through the gravel that's underneath the pavers, and the gravel itself has hundreds of inches per hour infiltration rate, which is all in the documents that we submitted earlier. So you get this system that clearly free drains through the surface of the pavers, clearly free drains through the gravel. And then the only thing that will slow it down would be the infiltration rate of your ground, which we encourage the contractor not to pre-compact. And what we do is we size the amount of gravel underneath the paving stones to hold a certain amount of water for 24 hours. 3 to 4 inches of gravel will hold about an inch of rainwater for 24 hours. So we size the reservoir, if you will, underneath. I've done millions of square feet of this, and most projects, 95% of the projects, have about a complete 21-inch cross section. That includes the 3-inch paver on top, the screeding, and then all that gravel underneath is less than 2 feet. Some of the biggest projects I've ever worked on maybe get close to 30 inches, but that's because it's in a wetland and it has significant other challenges on site. But think of a cross section of about 2 feet, which we included in one of the documents tonight. It's kind of a nice cross section. We call it a poster of permeable, and it just shows the different components and how it's built up. Just in conclusion, I want to say that we can take all of the rainwater that you can throw at us. We'll take all of it through the joint lines of the paver, store it underneath for a certain amount of time, and we want it to stay on site rather than run off, go through a pipe system, and then overtax the municipal system or go into the neighboring wetland. So we want to keep all the water on site. We don't want to compact, and we want to build a nice system that will accommodate that.
David, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, actually, just in line with what he said, by contrast, asphalt, which most driveways are composed in our day, do not accomplish that. Asphalt prevents rainwater from seeping into the ground. It increases the volume and the speed of water runoff onto other surfaces or onto other properties. And it's not completely environmentally friendly, where permeable pavers are environmentally friendly. They're attractive, they're expensive, yet I think we would all welcome that kind of design and aesthetic on all homes. It would be better for the environment, it'd be better for stormwater management, it'd be better for stormwater runoff. So I believe it is an excellent option for this site. It does nothing but promote and the neighborhood in a well manner, and it would be within the context of the residential neighborhood.
And if I could add just one more point, we also use recycled materials in the construction of our pavers, and our plant is located in Brewster, New York, so we're well within the typical 100-mile radius that projects like to see to be sustainable. To David's points, that our installation would be sustainable. We're using recycled products, and it's something that doesn't contribute to any water runoff into the neighboring environment.
Okay. So since the first issue is whether, it seems to me that the first issue is whether these permeable pavers should constitute a portion of the lot coverage, I would ask the board if they have any questions for either Mr. Zengen or Mr. Namiko with respect to the issue raised by the building inspector as to whether permeable pavers cause compacted surfaces.
Yeah, I'd actually I'm interested because it's been a while, obviously, since we've been reviewing a lot of these. I'm actually interested in understanding exactly what the variance request is. I know we have a couple things to sell prior to that, which is determining whether the permeable pavers constitute or not lot coverage. But can we review exactly what the request is on the variance, Mike? Because I'm still.
I'll try to help on that. It's really a two-step application and a two-part application. The first part of what the applicant is asking for is they're taking an appeal from the building inspector's determination. The building inspector determined that these permeable pavers count towards lot coverage.
Right.
The applicant is taking issue with that and saying, no, it shouldn't count.
Right.
And so that's the first level. That's an appeal. And so that's the first issue that's before you. And then the second issue that's before you is before you either way. The applicant is asking for an area variance. And the degree of the area variance that the applicant is seeking will depend upon what the result is of your first determination. So for example, if you agree with the building inspector and uphold his determination, that means that all the permeable pavers count towards lot coverage. So the applicant has a lot more lot coverage.
Right.
And so they're asking for a variance of, I think the numbers from my notes are 45.8% total coverage.
Correct.
Is what they're asking for. And I'm going to get into another aspect of that in a second. But if you reverse the building inspector and you agree with the applicant that the permeable pavers don't count, then the applicant is still over the permitted lot coverage. They have 38%. So there's a difference. That permeable paving issue is a difference of about 7.8% of coverage. Now, jumping off that, though, it's important to understand that it's a little bit even more complicated than that, in that the code actually provides a maximum lot coverage of 15%, but permits the planning board to increase that and to allow a coverage of up to 35% in some circumstances. So it gives essentially the planning board the right to give a variance. It's not really a variance per se. It just gives it explicit authority to grant that if the stormwater control measures meet certain standards. Now, it's my understanding that we don't know as a board whether the planning board is inclined to grant that or isn't inclined to grant that or has granted. I don't think they have granted it, but it's within their purview to do so. But they can't do any of it until this issue is decided, because they need to know, everyone needs to know, what's the issue of the permeable pavement? Does it count? And so they've got 45.8, or does it not count? And so they've got 38.
And that would result in a 3% variance.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little trickier than that. It's a 3% variance. It would be like, let's say hypothetically, you were to grant the variance, either the 38 or the 45.8. Let's skip past the permeable pavement issue. It would still go back. You wouldn't be saying you can do this. You'd be saying, I don't know. I suppose it's an odd issue because we don't know if the planning board has concurrent jurisdiction over whether they even want to grant it. So you'd be saying it's okay with us, essentially, but you still maintain your review standards, which is a different standard of review. What they're reviewing is whether the development integrates stormwater quality control measures, and that the planning board has to find that the control measures reduce the impacts of that increased coverage to the pre-development condition. So it's a different standard.
Right. Can you just
I don't know if that clears it up.
What the 15 versus the 35? The planning board giving the ability to change that. Can you explain that a little bit more?
So let's take all the other issues that are before this board out of the equation. And let's just to explain that, let's say the applicant has 35%. There's no permeable pavement issues. Just eliminate that as an issue. They would be only before the planning board. They wouldn't have to come to the zoning board.
Right.
Unless, right, so they'd be at the planning board saying to the planning board, look, we've got 35 and the code allows 15, but the code allows you, planning board, to permit us 35 if we show you and prove to you that our stormwater control measures meet certain performance standards.
Right.
And if they show that, then the planning board has the authority itself to grant the 35
Right.
without the need for a variance. Does that clear that up?
Yeah, but, and has the planning board approved that, or is that what you're saying?
I don't think that they have. Maybe I could ask Mr. Frischberg or Mr. Namatko to comment on that.
So David and I had to deal with the planning board engineer, and they requested that in order to get to the 35% coverage, the stormwater controls had to meet a certain water quality level, which is done through a pretty complicated spreadsheet that is given out by New York State stormwater design. So once we instigated these controls through the use of swales and rain gardens to get over this number that is made depending on how much new impervious coverage you have, then they allowed the 35%. So we submitted that to them, and the planning board engineer had reviewed it and decided that he had no comments and it was satisfactory. And that was the last we heard from that. So for all intents and purposes, we understood that to be acceptance of a 35% lot coverage.
So if I might just summarize that, they didn't vote on it yet, but your understanding is that you did what they asked, and that if you get the relief that you need from this board and you went back there, it would be acceptable. That's your understanding.
Correct. The planning board engineer did preliminarily approve it, and I'm not aware if the board in and of itself approved it as a vote, but the engineer did approve it.
Okay. I see the chairman wants to speak, so I want to defer to him. Right? You got your hand up?
Yes, I have a question. Can anybody on the design team talk to us about the groundwater table elevation and the permeability of the underlying soils, and where in the matrix of the existing soils this system is going to be installed? Because, yes, the permeable soils or the permeable pavers will pass the water through down into the gravel. The gravel has a 30% pore ratio. And it can store water, but the water ultimately has to go back into the ground.
Absolutely.
And we haven't really talked about, and I realize that this is beyond the planning board or the ZBA's field of questioning here, but you did bring it up by saying, well, it's permeable through the paver surface and then down into the gravel, but nobody has talked about the soil beneath that. So
Yeah.
If anybody on the project team can talk about the permeability and what tests have been done to determine the groundwater elevations out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great point, Mr. Murphy, because we wanted to make sure that the pavers would work in this circumstance. So in the middle of December, I actually have the percolation test that we did on December 12th, 2019, that we submitted to the planning board beforehand, and I believe we submitted to the zoning board as well, that shows that we did a test pit right in the middle of where the driveway is for lot 61, and the maximum time period for that percolation test was 5 minutes and 15 seconds. So that's a very quick percolation rate for that area. And there was snow on the ground at that time too. So that helps our case because of the saturation, the natural saturation of the soil with the snow. So 5 minutes is actually extremely quick for that. So I'm not concerned in the slightest about the permeability of the soil underneath the proposed pavers.
And
What is that
the
in inches
seasonal
per hour?
groundwater table level.
So when we when we dug the test pit hole, we didn't detect any groundwater or modeling, so that we know that at least down 2 to 3 feet that there was no groundwater levels for that. And to do a larger test pit to see how deep it is would require, you know, more investigation. But for something like permeable pavers, we usually never deem that really urgent.
Well, as I mentioned to Mr. Namaco during one of our previous meetings, the requirement for the percolation test is that it be done 2 feet below the base level of the applied surfaces. So like if you've got a 2 foot thick surface, you got to go 2 feet below that so that you're 4 feet in the ground to do your percolation test. So you know, just think about that as you go forward in the design on this. This is not in the purview of the ZBA. The ZBA is here tonight to determine whether or not the town building inspectors or the code enforcement officers' interpretation of the code is correct. And then after that, determine whether or not to grant a area variance. So I just raised that up to you to consider in the future design of this project as you refine it. Does anybody else on the board have any questions?
If anybody would like to see the definitions in question, yeah, I could share them in sequence, any of the board members.
I just had that.
Definitions of
Here.
Well, what's before the board is the decision made by Mr. Maldonado is based upon 2 sections of the town code. One is the zoning code 57-3 in the definition of lot coverage. And then the other is in section 46.2, which is the definition section of the code relating to stormwater, soil erosion, and sediment control.
May I be heard regarding section 46-2?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I just was asking the board a question first. I wanted to see if anybody would like me to share it. And then I'm sure certainly you'll have your time to address.
No, I have it right here.
You'll have them?
I have my definition.
Okay.
All right, so with respect to section 46-2, impervious surface or cover, that section by its terms concerns surfaces in the urban landscape. The urban landscape is the landscape in the middle of the town of Monroe. If you're building a building, it has nothing to do with residential buildings. So that section itself doesn't apply to this particular application because we're not in the urban landscape. And I would remind...
May I interrupt for a second? Do you have any support for that? Is there any legal support for that statement? I've never heard that before, ever.
Well, think about it this way. If there is an ambiguity in the code, zoning codes is an alienation of property rights, and any ambiguity is construed against the municipality. So the term urban landscape, you have to give a full meaning, just under the general rules of statutory construction, to every word in the statute. If you're not giving any meaning to the word urban, then you're ignoring its plain meaning, right? Because otherwise you're just talking about landscape, but you can't. Landscape is modified by the adjective urban. Landscape being the noun, urban being the adjective. So unless you're going to ignore the word urban, you're ignoring the plain meaning of that statute.
What's your definition of urban? What's the definition of urban that you think the board should apply?
Well, when I was looking it up, and I did have a case or two, generally urban comes up when you're dealing with cities. So if you wanted to look up the word urban, for example, you'd come up with the following definition. In a minute, give me a minute. So
Well, Mike, what's your, I mean, Dave, what do you, when?
To me,
We know what urban.
honestly, I don't think urban landscape means, I mean, personally, this is my opinion. I'm not a board member, but the urban landscape is not at all reflecting that definition. For just, if all you have to do is Google it in 2 seconds and it comes up all over the place, that it's not referring to urban or non-urban. Otherwise, the, you know, any reference to impervious surface or cover in the code would be completely inapplicable to anywhere in the entire town.
Right.
Or would apply only to certain places that some person would think is urban versus non-urban subjectively.
well,
I don't think that's what
if you
the
read
definition
further
of
into
urban.
that
I'm sorry, I'm talking.
paragraph-
Just let me finish, please. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The definition of urban landscape is, I think, is a term of art that's used talking about landscape not in the context of just vegetation, but the context of any view across land that's going to include anything that may or may not be man-made. That's what an urban landscape is. It's not it's not limiting the definition of impervious surface only to buildings.
Or a city.
Can
Or
I ask
city.
a question?
Um,
In looking at this code, it says those surfaces in the urban landscape which do not have a permanent vegetative cover and or cannot effectively infiltrate rainwater, including but not limited to building rooftops, pavement, sidewalks, driveways, and roads with surfaces of compacted dirt or gravel, asphalt or concrete decks, and swimming pools. So what part of that doesn't apply to what's being built here? That's really the definition of anything you would build on most residential lots. So I don't see how the word urban changes any of that.
will there be a permanent vegetative cover on this area where these pavers are going to be placed?
No, it can't be.
Oh, it's a
I'm asking the applicant. Will there be a permanent vegetative cover on any part of this area that the pavers are going to be?
David, can there be a permanent vegetative cover on these?
Well, Mike, no.
Okay. All right, so, you know, what's at the base of our decision here tonight is the term lot coverage. The percentage of the lot area that is occupied by the area of buildings, structures, and all impermeable or compacted surfaces, included but not limited to parking lots, access, and circulation drives.
Is by the way, is the pavers, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I mean, just saying that all of the parts that are in this, that's last statement, you can check them off and they're all here. Parking lots, rooftops, access drives, circulation drives. It's covered by lot coverage. Lot coverage, we're trying to split hairs here on lot coverage and say lot coverage only applies to impermeable surfaces. While impermeable surfaces are included in lot coverage, it's in my opinion that what this code is saying is that lot coverage includes anything in the built environment that is just not vegetated. And that's what we're talking about here. This is a parking lot surface that is not vegetated.
Yeah, but the difference is this parking lot surface is permeable. Everything listed in that definition is impermeable.
Right.
So the permeable pavers are acting as a vegetated surface. And they're doing so even better because they're providing water quality standards.
And all.
So we are splitting hairs because everything in that definition is impermeable.
Except for this.
The design system that we're proposing is permeable without
But
question.
I think you're missing the bigger point.
No, I'm not. No, it's not missing the bigger point. That is the point.
No.
Oh, yeah, and I think it's our, you know, we're faced with an initial decision regarding permeable or impermeable.
It's my understanding as well, and if other members have knowledge of this, you can speak up, but my understanding is that pretty consistently in the town, the building inspector has interpreted this section of the code to apply even to things like outdoor decks, slatted decks that would allow water to strike the deck surface, but then slide beneath and through the cracks, sort of just like these permeable pavers.
Right,
Where the surface itself is a compacted surface, like the pavers. I assume that the pavers themselves here are themselves compacted, and the permeable nature of it comes from the water going between the cracks, just like on a slatted deck where the water would strike the deck, and that's compacted, but then it slides between between the slats, and therefore is
So
permeable, but it still
correct.
counts as lot coverage per
Correct. The
the
pavers
age-old
allow
interpretation.
the pavers allow the water to flow through, but it actually contains all the water underneath in that reservoir, where the deck would allow the water to pass through but still run off throughout the site. So
I
this
guess that's
system
the real
actually
problem.
keeps
You know,
everything.
the problem is that the pavers are permeable. It's the bed, right? The subgrade is compacted to 95%, whereas the percolation test is taken in native soil, right? The subgrade will be compacted.
The documents that we submitted, you'll see on the poster,
I'm looking
9
at
steps to a permeable installation. We
Right, we're
routinely-
looking at the plans that have been submitted since the
I'm
beginning,
looking at detail 3 of
and not
C2.
something that was
Compacted to be 95%.
a day ago.
So if the subsoil is compacted, regardless of the fact that the permeable pavers are permeable, the subgrade will not meet the definition per 46-2. And that is the problem.
So back to my original comments, we routinely recommend that the subgrade not be compacted when you're trying to achieve full permeability. If we were building a permeable parking lot, say at the Unilock factory, where we need to run trucks on top of this that, you know, are in excess of 150,000 pounds, we would say compaction is more important to us than permeability. However, most of the job sites that we work on that are, you know, not a factory situation, we recommend that we don't compact the subgrade to allow for that permeability. We don't want to interrupt that.
So
So-
my detail there can be amended.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a more robust.
You know, that's all fine, but I still don't think that gets us past the, you know, our interpretation here that this is part of lot coverage, because lot coverage isn't strictly just about the impermeability of a surface. It's also about the maintenance of a green vegetative area. And this is where we get into talking about, you want to talk about the term urban, this is the urbanization of the town. When we have a lot coverage definition here in Monroe, the idea is to preserve green space and vegetative space within the lots. It's not to sit here and debate the impermeability or not. Now, if this code specifically called out that, you know, impermeable or pervious pavement surfaces are excluded,
Exempt.
I can see my way clear to agreeing with it, but it's not excluded specifically here. And I have to go by what I see in plain writing here on this, you know, this one sentence that represents that code. And what I know that the overall goal of the lot coverage requirement is.
I think if you talk about the overall goal of the lot coverage, both Mr. Zengen and Mr. Namiko have demonstrated that these permeable pavers are better than leaving it as a dirt road. I mean, in theory, under your theory, they could build this house, put in nothing, just leave it dirt, leave it plain old dirt. And they would then not need the pavers. And somebody could drive up to this house using a plain old dirt road, and that would be okay. But they made
No,
it
it wouldn't,
better.
because then that would be a compacted dirt surface.
No, it wouldn't. They just leave it, it's all good.
It
They
gets
just leave it
compacted
plain
over
dirt.
time. It gets
They don't-
compacted over time by cars driving back and forth over it. Then what you don't have is a parking area that you need to have 2 cars on each lot. So I think you're missing the point here. This subdivision, this 3-lot subdivision has been going on for what, by your own words, 1.5 years. You got to understand that, you know, somewhere in there is a message that you're trying to jam too much into this site. And you're here in front of this ZBA asking us to accept a 45% lot coverage in an area where the original base coverage is what, 15%?
with due respect, it's not your call to determine whether or not this is an appropriate plan or not. You're the ZBA.
Yeah, it's-
You're not the planning board. You're not the village engineer. You're not the town engineer. All you have to do is decide whether or not the building inspector was correct or not, and whether or not we're entitled to an area variance. It's not your call to opine about the propriety of this project. That's the planning board.
Right. And I think you have the gist of my interpretation of what we have before us right now. You know, I just gave you the overall big picture of what's going on here. But I mean, you know, we've been sitting here arguing about the definition of lot coverage. You disagree with the building inspector. We happen to agree with him on the lot coverage. And I think that's where we stand. I mean, it's not my decision solely. It's up to the other board members if they would like to, you know, ask any further questions.
I just have one question, if you don't mind. I mean, and just to illustrate a problem that I'm having with it just legally, is it your position, like taken to its logical conclusion, the position that you're taking on the interpretation and appeal would allow the applicant to literally put down these permeable pavers over 100% of the lot, and that none of it would count? Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Effectively, yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole town, everybody in the town could pave the entire town. It would basically write out the entire lot coverage, provision, because everyone in the whole town could just use permeable pavers and pave the entire town to its
It
lot.
would solve a lot of drainage.
And what would be wrong with that?
Right, it would
That would be
solve
an
a lot of
upgrade
drainage.
to our, I mean, let's jump into the
we don't-
21st century
Yeah,
here.
we don't want to live in an urban jungle where everything,
How are permeable pavers an urban jungle compared to asphalt?
it's not a vegetative
Well, it's
state.
not compared to asphalt. It's compared to a vegetative surface.
We can be in the 21st century.
Plenty of asphalt out there. You've got
if
private
everybody-
roadways,
if
you've got
everybody put
driveways, you've
permeable
got plenty of
pavers on the
asphalt.
driveway, we'd have a better society, better environment.
And the,
Without question.
and the vegetative surfaces you're referring to apply to green space in the town when you're building a building or a larger edifice. It doesn't apply to these residential houses that want these permeable pavers to be part of the house that make it better.
Could you point that out in the code to me?
Yeah.
You know, I'm
Because
looking
you're
at
ignoring the
definition
word
that's in the code
urban.
for lot coverage.
You're giving no separate meaning to the word urban. You're ignoring the adjective.
Well, I think if you read the adjective and then you read all the descriptors of what's included in that urban landscape, asphalt, concrete, decks, swimming pools, rooftops, sidewalks, pavement, these are all things that you're proposing on the lot. So your lot is urban by your definition.
And
No,
if, with all due respect, I think the analysis is backwards. You can't start with definitions in 46.2-2 for impervious surfaces or cover. What we're talking about is lot coverage as a term
Lot
of
coverage,
art.
exactly.
And lot coverage is defined under 57-3 as the percentage of the lot area that's occupied by the area of buildings, structures, and all A, impermeable, and or B, compacted surfaces, including but not limited to parking lots, access, and circulation drives. So lot coverage really consists of a couple things, at least two. One, impermeable surfaces, and two, compacted surfaces. And then when you want to try to find out what is an permeable surface, that's when you go over towards the other definition to talk about what impervious surface is. But
Well,
compacted
it doesn't-
surfaces in section 57-3 is any compacted surface. And I think, Mr. Frisberg, with all due respect, the way you phrased the question to Mr. Zengin was not the right question. When you asked him, will this installation compact the soil? That's not the question that the code is asking for. The code is asking for, is there a compacted surface? And the answer here is, as I think one of you answered my question before, the paver is a compacted surface. Even though it may be impermeable around its cracks, the surface itself is impermeable, which is why the code defines lot coverage, not only by whether it's permeable or impermeable, but also whether it has a compacted surface, not whether it will cause a compaction underneath it.
Yeah, I don't want to play devil's advocate, but the project is also in an SR 15 district, and I think S means suburban, right?
That's correct.
So that would be a suburban residential district.
So anyway,
What's different than if
Go
you
ahead.
have the term suburban, and then you have the term urban, and then you have the term rural? Why have all three terms?
I don't know, but it doesn't
Must
seem
be a
like
difference in
differentiates.
It doesn't differentiate
Right.
between it in the lot coverage definition.
I mean, if we were to advertise this home for sale in Monroe, we would say, come live in an urban neighborhood? No. you
Suburban,
come up to the
these are
suburbs,
little
come up
30-acre lots.
to a rural area, to the suburbs. You wouldn't say come up to the urban area to live. I mean, anybody would reference urban area to the city, or the 5 boroughs or Yonkers. I don't think anyone would call this area of Orange County urban by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
Or else you wouldn't have the term suburban.
Well, when you start getting to 45% lot coverage, you're starting to get to an urban condition for sure,
Yeah.
right?
I'm looking at, one definition by the International Research Journal of Environmental Science that talks about an urban landscape is a concrete and objective phenomenon embodied by the quality of the physical factors of the environment. It's a system formed by the relationship between man and the urban environment. And the topic of, and it just goes on. And that's what you see. But in any event, look, let me see if I can help move us, move the discussion along, right? So we've got this healthy discussion that we've just had in regard to point 1, right? The appeal and the definitions and the legalities of it. And Mr. Fristberg has made his, his legal arguments. And, I'm sure if anybody on that side wants to be heard further on that, certainly, be heard on it. What I was going to suggest is that the part 2 is also something that can be discussed in the context, in the same context, I think, which is, whether it applies and we're talking about 38% or doesn't apply and we're talking about 40, whatever the number is, I lost it. 45.8. The next question is, applying area variance standards to the idea of, has the applicant made his case under the 5 factors, and certainly they can be heard and should be heard, on those 5 factors in regard to that issue. Are they entitled to relief either as 38% and 45.8%? And that's something that the board might consider listening to and having the applicant present on as well.
Okay.
Well, we can present on that. So the question I'm going to ask you is, should the board first vote up or down as to whether or not this constitutes lot area? Because that might change the argument, or I can just make the arguments in the alternative.
It's a good question. It's a strange procedural question, right? There's no clear answer to that question. That there's no right way and wrong way, I don't think. Just a practical one. So on the first instance, of course, the applicant would like to know, where do we stand? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Are we arguing on 38 or 46? If the board were to proceed that way, it becomes very difficult, only in that we have a hearing opened on both matters. So I don't know how to close a hearing on one and render a decision without closing the hearing on the other. It's one hearing, so it's a little bit of a procedural snafu.
Right. And the other part is that, we haven't even opened the floor to the public yet. And there's a bunch of people listed out there that are, on this WebEx meeting. And maybe at this time, we've both gone through our pros and cons and our determinations or how we interpret the code here. Maybe at this time, we'll ask the applicant to present a set of plans that shows the layout of the lots that he's proposing. And we'll open the meeting up to the public for their comment and questions.
Well, is the chair opening the meeting to the public regarding whether or not the lot area includes the pavers? or generally as to whether or not we're entitled to the area variance.
Yeah, it's a good point, Mr. Chairman. If I just want to, and I'm sorry to step on you, it's awkward in this in this context, but just procedurally, legally, it's again, it's a difficult question how to proceed because the applicant hasn't really presented on that yet, and I'd rather you not open it up to the public to speak before the applicant has the ability to make his case on that part of the point. It would seem to me to be logical to do it that way, or you limit the comment right now only to the first issue and then proceed that way. I would do one or the other. I wouldn't open it up for all purposes unless you've given the applicant a chance to talk on the second point.
Well, how does he know what our determination is going to be on the code?
He doesn't. He'd have to argue in the alternative. I think. I don't think there's any other way to do it. And what I might suggest also,
this probably becomes very confusing for the public in order to ask questions about this project. Are they asking questions about the definition of lot coverage, or are they asking questions about the excessive lot coverage being proposed here?
Well, that's a good point, but I think that's why one of my suggestions is first to let the applicant maybe make an alternative presentation. I can preview the arguments, is that there are mitigative measures from the permeable pavers and either argue the substantiality based upon 38 or by 40, 45.6. And so he can make the same arguments and just in the alternative, everybody understands what he's going to be arguing one way or the other and let him present and then open it up. And that way you don't have to worry about what issue are you speaking on or not. That's my suggestion, but you're the chairman, it's your board, and there's no right way or wrong way, honestly.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Fishburne, would you like to present some alternative argument here before we open this up to discussion and questions by the public?
Sure, I'll present. This is Neil Frischberg. I will present the arguments, I suppose, in the alternative, because your determination really affects the substantiality of the variance within the context of the argument. It doesn't really affect the other portions of the argument. So if it pleases the board, I would like to make those arguments. May I proceed?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So the town law and the village law apply the same area variance factors to any applicant that seeks an area variance. To determine that, the ZBA has to consider the benefit to the applicant that the variance is granted is weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant. And in making that determination, the board has to consider the following 5 factors: whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance, whether the requested area variance is substantial, whether the proposed area variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district, and whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of your board, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of an area variance. And I'll address those with the court's permission one at a time. With respect to the undesirable change, the variance will not create an undesirable change in the neighborhood. We're putting in a brand new house with a lot that the planning board has already deemed appropriate. While I acknowledge that the ZBA can determine whether or not this will become an undesirable change, there's been no evidence before the ZBA that it will do so. Certainly this is going to be a new house with permeable pavers that enhance the value of the property and therefore the surrounding properties. With respect to the enhancement of the value of the property, I believe you already heard some testimony from Mr. Zyjan and Mr. Namiko, how it will enhance the value of the property. No one's ever complained about the size of the house, the size of the lot. As far as I know, no neighbor has ever come forward to suggest the property values are being decreased. In essence, there's nothing before the board that suggests an undesirable change in the neighborhood. And before, the The next issue you have to decide is the benefit without the area variance. This variance is being sought because the planning board made a determination that it prefers the lot line between lots 1 and 2, as I recall, remain exactly where they are. That is a straight line. Otherwise, the applicant has to put in sort of a triangle or have a jagged lot line, and the planning board didn't want that. So as a result, the applicant had to come before this board to seek the area variance. Otherwise, it wouldn't need to. We believe there's at least one planning board member has confirmed this. It's not really feasible for Mr. Schaefer to change the lot lines because that's the lot lines that the planning board wants. And candidly, creating a small triangle or a jagged line on the lot line makes no sense. At least that takes me to substantiality. So obviously this is argued in the alternative, because if you determine that it's part of the lot area, then it's more substantial. We suggest to you that even if it is substantial, that is it's 10% over, roughly. We're talking, that amount, it should not be dispositive. These pavers enhance the value of the property. They make it look good. Other houses in the area would love to have these pavers. And here's the hypothetical I would propose to you, that if we sold this house without the pavers, and the new owner of the house came to you and said, we'd like to install permeable pavers on this property, could they do so? And I would suggest the answer is clearly yes, because it would improve the property. It gives the property curb appeal. It enhances the water runoff, and otherwise is better for the property. Will the variance have an adverse impact or effect on the neighborhood? The answer to that is no. In fact, just the opposite. It will enhance the value of the neighborhood because the permeable pavers will enhance the value of the property. Moreover, you've already heard Mr. Zengen explain that there are no drainage issues. In fact, it helps the drainage issues. There's no sheet water runoff, which would be a concern to other property owners. Although in this case, not really, because it would only affect the other 2 lots that are next to it that remain undeveloped now anyway. But there are no drainage issues. There's no screening issues. The lot has access from Walton Terrace, and the private road is needed so the people in the back lots can access it. The next issue is whether or not the need is self-created. Now, it's true, the applicant is seeking a 3-lot subdivision. So arguably, I could understand why someone would self-created. However, here, the planning board decided that it wants the lot lines where they are. So therefore, the applicant isn't self-creating this problem. The planning board is causing the issue. And therefore, it's not even a self-created. The planning board dictated how it wants the lot lines. It wasn't claiming that it's too crowded. It wasn't claiming this was a problem in the neighborhood. It just wanted to keep the lot lines where they are. Now, I heard Mr. Murphy loud and clear that this has been going on for a year and a half, and that maybe the applicant should get the hint that it's too crowded. Candidly, it's not his call. It's not the call of the ZBA. That's the call of the planning board, and they already determined that this is a good idea, and all they need is the ZBA to issue an area variance to permit this. With respect to the adverse impact, substantiality, or whether or not the benefit without the area variance or the undesirable change in the neighborhood, I'm going to ask Mr. D'Amico if he wants to add anything to this.
The overall project is a cluster development, and that's allowing the 3 houses within this area. As a result of the cluster development, a ½ an acre is conserved to be undeveloped. So while we're working in this area of 1/4 acre lots, 1/3 acre lots, ½ acre lots, here a whole ½ acre will be dedicated to conservation area. that is a plus and a positive aspect of the project that can't be ignored. We want to, as Mike had mentioned earlier, preserving whatever vegetation and landscape we can. This cluster development actually preserves a half an acre of conservation area. So that, coupled with all the other points that we discussed already and all the other technical aspects, believe the project is viable, and we wish the ZBA to grant the variance.
Yeah. As I understand the map is that these permeable pavers and the conservation easement also take in the water. Can you speak about that? Mr. D'Amico?
Yeah, that's
Saul?
yeah, that's certainly true. The water quality report that we submitted to the planning board engineer includes a stipulation for conservation of natural areas as it's defined in the stormwater design manual. So that definitely absolutely counts for something, because it's intended to keep it in its natural vegetated state.
So I'm looking at the map and it looks like there's 23,352 square feet of conservation easement. Is that right? Am I reading that right? Or is there more than that?
Yeah, I believe that to be correct.
Oh, no, there's another one. There's a lot number 2 easement area, 11,935 square feet.
And that one, the 12,000.
So you got, oh yeah, and you got another one for 12,000. So these guys have 12, 24, another 24, 48,000 square feet of conservation area that they're leaving. And they're,
I believe that's incorrect. Matt,
Yeah.
12,000 on one lot and 12,000 on the other lot, 24,000 square feet.
So a little
I'm confused. I'm looking at the map. It says proposed conservation easement per town code, 23,342 square feet, 0.53 acres.
That's correct.
Lot
That's
one.
the total.
That's correct.
That is the total.
Oh, that's the total. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I apologize. Oh, I see. Lot 1, 12,614. Lot 2, 11,935. Is that correct?
Yes,
That's
and then
correct.
there's
That's about a half
small
acre between the two.
Yeah, and then there's a small portion on the across Lakes Road, lakeside parcels that are attached that will also be deeded to conservation land as well. That's directly next to Walton Lake.
Oh, I see. 604 square feet.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
So we got
So most of, when I look at this
24,000.
this whole subdivision, it looks like almost 40% of it is this conservation easement, just eyeballing it. So I don't see how this adversely affects the neighborhood at all. But and so I'm going to open it up to questions to the board, to me, to either me or to Mr. D'Amico, to Saul, to Mike Zengen.
Can we just clarify it's Namaco? I'm tired of
Namako. Namako, I'm sorry. Namako. Sorry. It looks like Namiko. Just
Agreed.
Over 50 years, that the names stay like that. I think we got to keep it that way.
Hey, Frischberg is butchered forever.
Join my club. There you go.
Okay. All right. So, we've been at this for quite a while now, and I thank you for your explanation of the project and the lively debate on the topic. And I'd like to open it up to questions from the public members.
So anybody that would like to be heard on it, if you know how to, activate your little hand, the electronic hand, please do that, and I'll activate you. And if you don't know how to do it, put something else up. So I see Cynthia Francis is the first one with a hand up. So let me see. Miss Francis, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Can everybody else hear her?
Yes.
We can hear her, we just can't see her.
Right, I can't see you. You don't have your video on, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Fair enough.
That's not required.
Can you state your full name and your address for the record, please?
Cynthia Francis, 404 Lakes Road, Monroe, 1050.
04 Lakes Road. Must be right here.
That's right next door.
Yes.
Okay.
Can everybody else
give me one-
please remain quiet while Ms. Francis speaks?
Yeah. Noreen, can you hear okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, good. I saw you muted and I was trying to unmute you and I could not. So I just wanted to
I
make
was
sure that you
getting
got
too
all
much
that down.
feedback.
Okay, no problem.
But I do
I'll,
have to ask that we try not to step on each other because I have to transcribe. And when too many people talk at the same time, I will not be able to decipher this. So if we could please do one person at a time.
Yes, so we're going to do that, and Cynthia Francis is going to speak now, and I've muted everybody else other than board members and you, Noreen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you for holding this meeting tonight. I have listened and I have, as businessmen, I understand your points. As a resident here, and I don't know if my neighbor's on the line, what you say is a welcome change for the neighborhood. That may be so. I have not seen it as yet, and I totally disagree. As far as the green space, it's lovely to be able to be in a suburban area and have the peace and quiet. I don't know, 3 houses on that lot would still beautify the area. That is my opinion. I am not in agreement. I do understand that business is business, but there also is the livelihood of having the type of surroundings that we have. I do not, and I've not seen your plans, so I cannot agree that it's going to be such a lovely addition to the neighborhood as yet. From what you say, it seems crowded. So I am not in agreement with this at all.
Okay.
Can we show a map to the audience so that they can see what we're talking about here? I mean, we're all familiar with it because we've been looking at it for a number of meetings, but I think it's, you know, in the public's interest to see a map.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody from the applicant, can you share a map or no?
Yeah, my big spiel, I'm jumping into the 21st century and I'm having trouble doing it myself. Let me see what I can do.
It's up. You can see it.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Who's sharing that map? Is that you, Mr. Namatko, or is that you, Chairman Murphy?
It's myself. What I basically did here was I did an overlay of the project map on an aerial photograph from Orange County GIS and lined it up so that you can see how these 3 homes would fit in with the surrounding development.
Okay. Maybe the applicant could just point some things out and the you know, which lot is the one that we're talking about, and maybe also point out that issue with the planning board line that they've asked you to put in versus the other line that you could put in, and just explain that and point that out for the board and for the public.
Go ahead, David.
This is the lot in question. This is the lot that we're talking about. This is the area that we're proposing the permeable pavers in this driveway right here. This is the private road that continues for all 3 houses. The lot line that we're proposing right now would start at this corner and continue straight to this corner and then up towards Walton Terrace. This lot off of Walton Terrace is an existing lot. It's a pre-existing non-conforming lot. So, and it is a quarter of an acre, well, 9,800 square feet. So that should, you know, it should be noted too. I mean, keeping that lot line where it is right now, we keep it as a pre-existing non-conforming lot.
Could you show us the jagged line that would change the calculations if you did that instead of keeping them nice and straight?
Saul, could you show?
I haven't, I'm sorry. I have a bit of an issue with that jagged lot line theory, because when I looked at that jagged lot line layout, it didn't look like the other two lots had suitable room for driveways and 2 cars in the parking lot, which are requirements of the lots. So I don't think that that alternate lot layout was really ever proved out.
Well, Mike, actually it was, because it made the lots 1 and 2 have houses with front-loaded drives, not side-loaded driveways.
Just lot 1 had a front-loaded drive.
So lot one would have a front-loaded drive, and that would allow the setbacks for it to work. That's the difference.
And what would that do in regard to the lot coverage if you did that?
It would bring it down below the 35%.
With or without the permeable pavers?
Correct. And we would not even be here, because we would have been finalizing the planning board process. And I believe in our initial meeting, I did hand out to everybody the sketch showing the lot line change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we have it.
Yes.
Okay.
We have a copy of that. It was a partial, it was an 8.5 by 11 map, so it didn't show the entire subdivision.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it just highlighted the zigzag line, which would have, basically it comes across here.
Right.
and
Why,
goes in.
why is that? I mean, that's not what we're considering though, correct?
Right, that's not what we're considering. They're saying alternatively, they could have done that and
Okay, but they didn't.
the lot coverage variance.
You know, one of the area variance factors is, you know, is the idea of feasible alternatives that don't require a variance. Can you speak to that issue about the feasibility of that other plan?
You mean with the change in the lot line?
Yeah, if you went with the option that the planning board does, you know, has expressed that they don't want, but if you went with that, is it feasible? Is it not? What's the benefit to the applicant? What's the benefit that the applicant is seeking that of the variance over not getting a variance and just going with that other layout?
David, why don't you speak to that? Go ahead. You were before the planning board.
Well, it was based on perception. I mean, I hate to oversimplify the matter, but some of the board members just didn't like the zigzag lot line. And they prefer this lot line. We don't want the zigzag because it makes house lot number 1 have a front-loaded driveway. Right now, both lot 1 and 2 have side-loaded driveways, which is, of course, desirable.
Yeah.
So
Can you just expand upon that? Tell us why. Tell the board why.
Excuse me?
Just explain why it's more desirable to have it on the side. I think it's obvious, but if you just explain it also for the public.
Not generally speaking, one of the initial design elements you use in a simple house is try to avoid putting the garage doors on the front elevation. Usually you try to put them on the side. That also creates a natural driveway and a place to park cars. When you put them in the front, you just have to deal with that type of look. And I mean, while it's not the worst in the world, you know, you definitely would like to have the garage doors on the side. It makes for an aesthetically pleasing house.
Yeah. The problem I saw with that zigzag lot line was that the lot where you had a front-loaded garage only had a driveway that was 16 feet long.
Correct.
Right, so it's too short. You know, the car would be sticking out 4 feet into the roadway. So that really geometrically didn't work. That's some of what I was getting at about earlier when I said that alternative lot layout was never proven out completely. And I mean, as it is in this case, on lot 61, that's a front-loaded house.
Correct.
Right.
And it's always been.
Yep.
I mean, it's always been. There's some design constraints that won't change. You know that. So, I mean, that is a design constraint that we have, and we had to deal with it from the beginning.
All right.
So whoever, Cynthia was speaking, have you seen this map now, Cynthia?
Yes, I've seen it, and it's at this point it's a proposed. It's not an actuality. It's so.
Right.
I'm not impressed. I'm sorry.
Okay, just one thing to point out also is, you know, here's the half acre of green space that would be preserved on the lot. So this portion faces Lakes Road, you know, as you come down the county road. It
Yes.
remain looking the same as it does now. You just see that little dirt driveway cut, and there's a tree line across the road frontage.
Yeah.
Then there's no plans to do anything really within this green area under this subdivision proposal. It would remain the same.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I, Mr. Chair, can I ask the chair to ask Cynthia, in terms of the map, where she is in relation to the project? Is she the house with the pool? I'm just trying to figure it out. Was she to the left, to the right?
I'm the house with the pool.
There's two pools though.
The stone
To the
Oh, to the left?
to the left.
To the left, okay.
Oh, to the left. Okay, so down here, so, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's where the map ends.
Okay,
Yes,
I was just
yeah.
trying to figure it out. I just wanted to picture in my own mind's eyes to where it was. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm looking, it's a little tough for me to view the people. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to
Okay,
speak?
I'll stop share. Does anybody need to see a map again? I guess we could bring it up later if you need to.
I'll show you what it
The
is.
screen back to you, David.
Okay, I think I saw Tina, Tina, you raising your hand? I'm trying to unmute you. I can't unmute you.
She's probably muted.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
I can now. Yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. So I had been at a previous meeting
I'm
about.
gonna interrupt. Just state your full name and your address for the record, please.
Sure. Tina Anastas, 40 Francis Lane, Monroe.
Noreen, you got that?
Oh, she's
Hold
on.
on. But you know what? Would you give me, I didn't write it down. Oh, Noreen, you there?
Yeah, sorry, my button wasn't working. Could you just spell your last name for me?
Sure, Anastas, Anastos.
Thank you. And it was 40 Francis Lane?
Correct.
Thank you.
Sure. So, I'm sorry. You can go?
Go ahead.
So at a previous meeting, the subject was brought up that this is there's a lot of protected land there. I mean, whatever happened with that issue, is that still something that was resolved, that this land is now we're able to build on the majority of it? And, you know, I mean, this little piece, what did we say was left? It was like a small portion is left that's going to be green, but the majority of it, wasn't it protected land? Or am I wrong?
Yeah.
That might have been before the planning board, not the zoning board, with the conservation easement.
Okay, so it's not an issue that we would talk about here?
No.
No,
Right.
that is the planning board. Correct, David?
Correct. Yeah, that's not an issue before the board unless look, if there's some sort of covenant that prevents any development on the lot, I think we'd ask the applicant to let us know that because that would sort of cut this short, but
No, as a great advantage to this project, a half acre would be conserved. So it would become dedicated land without improvements. That would be the positive aspect of the whole of this project. It would be a byproduct of it. Right now, there's no protected lands. If the project goes through, a half acre will be protected.
And how much area is being developed? How many acres, or what's the size?
Fair question.
About one,
I've just shared my screen again to show.
about 1.23 acres.
That's correct. It's about 1.2 to 1.3 acres.
For the whole development.
Correct. Lots 61 and lot 1 and 2.
And lot 1 and 2, what we're talking about in terms of the green area, it's approximately a half acre of land that borders the Lakes Road.
Correct.
I gave the water up.
But isn't part of that the
Down there.
street that's gonna come up into the development though?
196 feet of lineal space.
Excuse me, Tina?
yeah, Mr. Frischberg, whoever's speaking in the background, we can hear over there. So go ahead, Tina.
So when you're coming from Lakes Road to get into this development, doesn't that cut into that half of an acre?
No, access to the development would be from Walton Terrace. It wouldn't be from Lakes Road.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right. The existing dirt driveway you see in the aerial photograph is not being used.
It'd be
It's
abandoned.
abandoned.
I see, okay, okay. I just have one more question. So, and I don't know if this is a moot point now because with the permeated, the pavers that are permeable, but I mean, are there two variances being applied for here? Like if with the pavers and then a second variance as far as the neighbors here, like
It's essentially the same variance. It's a variance for lot coverage. In one instance, they have 3% more lot coverage than they're allowed. And in the other case, I believe it's 11% more lot coverage than what's allowed.
3 and 11, yeah.
3 and 11.
all right, well, thank you for that information. And just for the record, as a neighbor that butts up to that development, I think it really is overcrowding, and I think it is turning the area into a more urban, it's just it's overcrowding in my opinion. I think it's squeezing too many homes into a small area. I echo what Cynthia said before, so just for the record, but thank you for listening to me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just if I can ask the chair to tell me where this applicant resides in relation to the map that's currently up?
Correct.
I don't know. Is Francis Lane in the Twin Lakes Estate subdivision adjoining? Okay.
Yes.
So somewhere off of this cul-de-sac.
So, you know where 41 is? You see the house? I'm to the left of it, 2 houses. Not that one, but the next one. Yep.
All right. So it's off the map. It's on the other side of the.
Right. That's my, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
It's up there.
All right, so this property is not contiguous then? Is that a fair statement?
No.
Yes, that's correct. But I have a perfect view of that from my front porch, so it's not contiguous, but I can see it from my front yard.
Okay. All right, this is just the same green space. I understand. Okay.
Mr. Fishberg, we hear you in the background.
Sorry. I can mute myself if you'd like.
Yes, please do.
Okay, I'll mute myself. Give me a sec.
Okay. So is there anyone else from the public that would like to be heard on this? I'm looking through here, you know, and I'm gonna unmute. I'm gonna see if I can unmute everybody if I can.
Okay.
just so everybody could speak if they need to. Actually, Chairman Murphy, would you mind unsharing your screen? It's
Yep.
easier for me to navigate through here to get to what I need to do that.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, I've unmuted everybody. Is there anybody, or I've tried to anyway. Some people are still muted. Is there anybody else here that wants to speak on this application right now from the public?
We would.
Okay. All right, you want to state your names for the record and maybe speak one at a time so that the record's clear?
My name is James Sikoriak. I live at 41 Francis Lane. And you asked about contiguous properties. I have, in those pictures, my house is the one that's right in the middle of all that. I have talked to the board in the past about issues that I've had and concerns that I've had about this development and my water issues. Now, there was determination that were made that my wells, which are horrible to begin with, will not be affected. Now, with this new plan and these permeable pavers, I have concerns again, because if you bring those maps up again, at the very corner of that, my property line is where my well is located. And that's where this house is being built and these permeable pavers. And I still have concern about my water.
Mike, can you
And
bring
they
up
did the test a few months ago. My water has not been the same. And I am very, very concerned about it. I don't care if they made the determination that the well is strong enough to hold 3 houses. My water is bad, and you're putting these pavers in, and I don't know if my water is going to be bad again. So I need some confirmation that this project of 3, 4, 5 houses, whatever it was originally, is not going to affect my water. And I've never gotten a good explanation or any type of response from when I did it originally till now, which is the appeals board. I understand that. I am concerned about my water. And you can say all you want about putting these permeable pavers. I am concerned about my water because if you look at my well, it's the closest point to that house that you're talking about.
Okay.
That is my concern. And it will never, you have my house up there right now. That pink line where there is a triangle at the end, that's where my well is.
Good.
May I be heard?
There you go.
Okay.
So that is my concern.
There's
It
your
will
well, Rick.
never end until this whole project is done and everyone's done and they're happy about their houses being put up there. My concern is about my well. It's never going to change. So I am passionate, I'm emotional about this. And it's not that my view's being blocked. It's about how this is going to affect the water that I bring into my family of 5. Thank you.
Okay.
May I be heard?
Mr. Sikoriak, we heard your concern here. That's a matter that's more appropriate with the planning board.
Right, there you go.
So, but we did hear your concerns, and I would suggest that you follow up with the planning board with your concerns about your well.
No, I understand that, sir. And I appreciate that, but this is something new that's been thrown into it. So I don't know about these permeable pavers, if that's going to change anything. So that's my concern.
Okay.
Did
Thank you.
Mrs. Sikoriak also want to speak, or did Mr. Sikoriak speak for you?
I mean, he basically speaks for both of us. It's the same thing. What I would like to say, looking at this picture, I don't know if you guys have been actually to the site to actually see what this looks like, the 3 homes and stuff like that. But to me, it looks a little, I'm sure it's true to scale, but it looks so incredibly skewed because from my pool area to where the orange, the pink line is, I mean, it's 100 yards from what I'm looking out right now. I'm looking at Lakes Road. I'm literally looking at Lakes Road right here. And for them, for me to see them putting 3 houses there, it's going to be like a really kind of strict and constricted place. And there's so much room that it looks like behind my pool, which you're showing right there with your X, to where that house is going to be. I mean, my son can throw a baseball halfway down that way. To me, it just seems a little bit skewed. And hey, listen, it is what it is. But I'm just
I
trying to
had
keep
to
my piece
estimate
in.
that back property line is probably about 100 feet from your pool.
More.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not more. It's about 100 feet.
yeah, I mean, if that, I mean, it seems like it's a little bit further with the way it's constructed, but, you know, the 2 green lines there's a bunch of brush, but I would assume that what you're saying is there's just no entirely way that a house can be constructed to look the way it does on this scale. That house is going to be in my backyard. It's without question will be in my backyard, as will both the houses. I can't read that because it's too small for me, but yeah, they were literally in my backyard. So it is what it is. But if those 2 houses are on top of my yard, then that in the 3rd house, that means they're on top of my well. And that's the problem that Jim has stated. And that's the problem.
Mr. and Mrs. I'm sorry, the Sikoriak.
It's not an easy name to say. Don't worry about it.
Did you speak to the planning board when they were in the approval process for this?
We have.
So you did air your grievances at the planning board prior to them making.
They did a well test. That was my main concern.
Okay.
But with this other additions that are going on, I still have that concern. And I think I'm okay to have that concern because it's changing what I was told when they did the well test.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Mr. and Mrs. Sikoriak?
No, sir. Thank you for your time. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, is there anybody else? I think I saw Mr. Frischberg had his hand up and I think was looking to respond to something that was said. And if so, he can be given the opportunity to do that and to see if there's anybody else that wants to speak as well.
No, I think the chair agrees with my assessment that the last 2 comments were planning board issues and not ZBA issues. And I believe the planning board has made a decision that they're not adversely affected. I would refer to David to confirm this. Is that true, David? That these have been planning board issues?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to add to that. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that is here? I see there's plenty of people here still. Is there anybody else that would like to be heard on this application right now? Any part of it?
3 people.
No? Okay. So procedurally, does the board have any further questions on either of the issues, the interpretation or the variance issue? Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I had one thing that I had in my notes that I wanted to ask the applicant. Is there, just in terms of one of the factors for the granting of a variance, again, the feasibility of alternatives, you addressed the issue that I asked about before with the one lot line versus the other lot line. Is there any other alternative to lower the amount of the variance sought, a reduction in the lot coverage through other means, anything like that the board should consider, that you'd like the board to consider, or that you'd like to consider that it cannot be? Any comment on that?
David, can they change the lot lines?
No, not under the cluster development scenario that we're making this application.
Or lot coverage. Like, is there anything else on the property that might be counting towards lot coverage that you could eliminate that the board might consider?
Well, the private road is a unique situation. In the zoning code for this town, this private road needs to be included in a lot coverage. In other municipalities, that may not be the case. So that private road is definitely a unique situation which is impacting the project and the lot coverage.
Well, I don't think private roads are unique to the town of Monroe. Every town has the provision for private roads.
But it counted in the lot coverage? Yes.
Oh, of course. Of course. I mean, it's pavement within the area that's being developed. It's got to be lot coverage.
Well, no, that doesn't have to be. There are other municipalities that don't count decks as lot coverage, and yet the town of Monroe does. So, you know, there are differences between the municipalities. There's no question.
Well, I guess if the pavement wasn't in part of the lot, then you can say, oh, it's in a right of way, it's not part of the lot, and you calculate your lot based on the area that's within the lot. But the pavement is part of the lot.
Well, I'm not debating that, Mike. I'm just saying it's a unique situation.
This is a unique subdivision. You know,
So, procedurally, you know, the options from here, again, it's a very unique set of circumstances. Just up front, what I would like to do is, just as lawyer, as one that might be helping you through the resolution or decision, given the weighty legal issues, one way or the other, I would like the opportunity to, you know, hear your deliberations, if you're going to deliberate and close the hearing, or if there's more stuff you'd like to hear, keep the hearing open and ask the applicant to bring. But I don't think I've heard anything yet from any of the board members that says, well, we need more information on this. It sounds like you might be headed towards closing the public hearing. If you are of that mindset, I'd prefer you not to vote tonight to allow me to do some legal research and assist the board in that regard. But I'd like to hear, you know, you talk about some of the factors and how you feel about some of the issues to give me some guidance, you know, between now and the next meeting. That's my preference as lawyer. It doesn't mean you have to do that, but it would be my preference to do that.
okay.
Dave, what legal aspects are you concerned with?
Well, for example, like anytime there's an interpretation or an appeal of a determination, there's a lot of legal principles, and Mr. Frischberg was quoting some of them. And, you know, as lawyers, we know when we get into, battles over meanings of code provisions, there's all sorts of different legal principles that apply. And I just like to get, I'd like to draft a decision on it that's correct and cites the right legal principles, and check what the board has in mind against the legal principles. And if I have any further legal advice to impart it upon you, and just do it right and button it up with a, with a well-written decision that you can consider and reject or consider and accept, but that expresses what I believe your intent is. But just to do it right legally. Anytime that there's something like this, that's my preference. Doesn't mean it has to be done that way.
Yeah. David, my feelings on the meeting tonight is that, this is the first time. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So this is the first time we've held a meeting in this kind of a format via WebEx. There was a lot of public input. There was a lot of debate amongst the board members and with the applicant as to, what the issues are here. I mean, I would be inclined to keep the public hearing open, give you a chance to, explore the legal aspects of this, and do a continuation if the applicant is in agreement with that process.
I'm not keeping it open.
May I be heard? Mr. Chair, may I be heard?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Fishburne.
So my preference would be to close the public hearing. If the attorney for the board wants to research certain issues, I would ask him to identify those issues so that I would have an opportunity to research them as well. Because if he comes up with certain conclusions based upon cases, I'd want an opportunity to, if I don't agree with those conclusions, to present the board with our opinion as to what the cases stand for. In which case, the board can then vote on the issue up or down. But we definitely want the hearing closed.
Well, just legally on that, you know, the only research that I would do, and again, I don't want to give away any attorney work product or any privileges or anything like that, but I think it's fairly clear, I made from my prior comments, it's issues of statutory construction. It's the same law that, you know, that I'm sure you'd be looking up to advocate, that I'd be looking up to advocate or to support or to understand and make sure that, you know, it's the correct law and current law and update the current cases. There's no surprises in that regard. So, ultimately it's up to the board to do what it would like to do. I mean, Chairman Murphy, you make a good point, only because of the issue of, this being conducted by Zoom and video and being our very first one. It's a fair point to say, look, if there's anything else that's out there, any of the members of the public that want to be heard, it might not be a bad idea to keep it open with the intent to close it next meeting. That's a fair way to proceed if you'd like to do that. Just on, out of an abundance of precaution for, for that purpose. And if Mr. Frischberg in the meantime wanted to submit any case law for the board's consideration or any other further, legal arguments, he could do so in the meantime because the hearing would be open. He'd be free to do that if he wishes. I guess he does not want to do that because he wants the hearing closed. Or you could close it. It's up to you. I mean, it's, you don't, I guess what I'm saying is you don't need the applicant's consent or assent to keep it open or to close it. It's your choice, and the applicant has to live with that. But if the applicant was saying, I want to keep it open because there's more I want to show you, then I would advise you keep it open, let the applicant do it.
Dave, can I just interrupt for a moment? Please, Scott's iPad.
Yes.
Scott's iPad, can you please turn off your microphone because you keep cutting into
I
our-
just muted you.
There you go. You.
So I was done speaking. I've said my piece, so it's up to you guys what you'd like to do.
Well, there's no negative with keeping the meeting open, correct?
Well, there's an expense to the applicant. And it delays the process another month.
Well, it wouldn't, if the board isn't, it would only if the board was inclined to take a verbal vote on both issues and end it tonight. Then that's a valid point, Mr. Frischberg. Nobody wants to unnecessarily burden an applicant with expenses for experts and lawyers and engineers. But if the board is inclined to have it over for the next meeting anyway, along the lines that I previously suggested, then the applicant would be here next month anyway. So that's the lay of the land there. Both fair points.
Now, what we're concerned about is, we don't want another set of people to come in and to start raising issues that they could have raised today that they suddenly realize they want to raise afterwards. And from my perspective, the issues that people in the public have raised are planning board issues. I don't think anybody has raised any issues that really relate to the area variance issues.
David said, can you bring up if they're taking?
Yeah, I don't know that, I mean, keeping the public meeting open, I'm not sure what that accomplishes necessarily, unless, as you mentioned, Mike, you think there's people who weren't able to participate because of the situation we're in with the Zoom.
Yeah, that's the only thing that really concerns me, Pete, because this one had a lot more attention than any one of the recent public hearings we've held. For example, the item just before this, which was a public hearing, nobody had issue. We had one commenter and boom, that was it. This one, there's a lot more moving parts to it.
Right.
I don't know that anybody in the public is going to have anything more to question about it. They talked about the closeness of the houses, potential impacts to wells, and things that are, some of those things are planning board issues. Other of them are character of the neighborhood issues. So I don't know. I'm just uneasy about closing a public hearing like this where we're, in new territory. I just don't want people coming back and saying, well, we didn't have our chance to speak. We didn't realize that this meeting was being held via a webcast and we have concerns that weren't heard. That's my concern, that, there could be members of the public out there that don't have the ability or have recognized that we're holding this meeting in this fashion.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's dicey.
Yeah.
Well, but that ignores the actual, notices are sent out to everyone. The applicant paid for those notices. This imposes candidly an unfair burden on the applicant.
No, it doesn't, because the meeting remains open. No new notices have to go out, so there's no additional expense there. You've got to come back anyway, because honestly, I don't think we're reaching a decision tonight. So if we just leave it open, I don't know, maybe, our meetings are the fourth Tuesday of the month. Maybe by late May, we'll be able to hold a public meeting at town hall. I don't know. It's just, this new format, and my concern that not everybody who may have had a concern was able to be heard.
Well, why don't you could reserve decision and close the public hearing.
Yes.
That would be an easy way to do it.
Right, but then the public hearing is closed, and those people who may have been left out of tonight's meeting were left out of the process.
With due respect, it's not the applicant's burden here. He paid for the hearing. Everyone had an opportunity to do this.
It's a whole different situation, though, Mr. Fitchburg. It's different. People are used to coming down to town hall and sitting down and going to a meeting that way. This is new to everybody, and not everybody is computer savvy. There may be people out there that, didn't even see it on the webpage, didn't understand how to connect to the link. And those are the few people that I'm concerned about that may not have been heard.
When you look at the area around, there aren't that many people that are contiguous to this property, and they spoke.
There's, by the way, Mr. Chairman Murphy, Cynthia Francis has her hand up electronically. Would you like to hear from her?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sorry about the background noise. I am in total agreement that you should not close this out. As you stated, and it's a direct and valid point, not all are computer savvy and not all were aware. And I do believe that given a extension of time, I think you're going to have more people that will come forward and have something to say. And this is an important issue that should not just be swayed away because of we are in a pandemic, and I think everyone should be given another opportunity to actually be heard. Whether you send out notices or not, now that those of us that are on the phone, we can probably do our own due diligence and make others informed when we have an exact date, but do not close this out.
Just to be clear, Ms. Francis, that if we do keep the meeting open, there will be no notices going out.
I understand.
Notice here at this meeting.
That's fine. But
Okay.
if we know the date,
Right.
if there's going to be another hearing, you can exactly put the word out yourself.
The only thing I would say, Ms. Francis, is that people's comments are very important to the whole project, but people do need to understand also the differentiation between the different boards and what our mandate is as to what we're doing here, which might conflict with the planning board, but the planning board had their time, they did their work, they've done their approvals. It then falls to the zoning board to make its determinations based on what we're here talking about. So I just ask the public to understand the roles of the different boards and what information we would be interested in that would help us determine something around permeable pavement or not, and lot coverage and things like that. So that's the only thing I would say to the public, to want to, have more input as it relates to specifically what we're, looking at.
I agree, and that's fine, but we still should be heard.
Understood.
Thank you.
So from my perspective, what Ms. Francis is asking the board to do is an opportunity to rally the troops to further oppose this application when she had a full and fair opportunity to do so today. And she's had a full and fair opportunity to do so before the planning board.
Mr. Frischberg, we know our responsibilities and what we're looking at, and we understand the public and the emotion that comes with things like this. So whether they want to try to rally troops, we still understand what our role and what our responsibilities are. And it's not going to be swayed by somebody making an emotional statement about not wanting a project done. That's not going to happen.
And sorry to interrupt, that's not where I was going with that. You brought on your professional opinions. I think if we keep the points made and make the points based on this board, I think that there are others that may have something to say professionally based on what is going on tonight. I was not before the planning board, so some of us were not. If we keep the main thing, we understand the board that we're before. I think we're all smart enough to not bring an issue to some board that's not going to be able to answer on that.
Understood, but the points that came up today, Ms. Francis, were specifically planning board issues. So that's the only point I'm trying to make.
That's okay. We could just explain away to that, when that type of question comes up, that's a matter for the planning board. What we're looking at here, we're focusing on the definition of lot coverage and the applicant's request for a variance on lot coverage due to the layout of the lots and the many pieces of infrastructure and housing that are being proposed.
Right.
That's our job, is to clarify that to the public when those questions come up.
Absolutely. Again, if the person, whoever wants to state their opinion, if it's in the guidelines of what your decision is going to be based on, then that's fine. Again, it's open to the public. They can say what they need to say. And again, you know who you're going to answer and what way you're going to answer. And they'll have to go back to the planning board on that. But again, I don't think it should be closed out tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Francis.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's the board's pleasure?
I would entertain a motion to, hold over the public hearing till the May 26th meeting.
Well, it's over our objection.
Yeah, just procedurally, it's my view that you don't need a motion to keep it open. It can only be closed on a motion to close it. So if anybody wants to make a motion to close the public hearing, now would be the time to do it. Otherwise, it would be, to be put over to the next meeting, and you can announce that, and that's where it'll be.
And his testimony.
I just want to be clear on something. Is Michael Zengin's testimony and information before the board right now?
Yeah, why would it not be?
Okay, I just want to make sure. In terms of the documents that he sent in, that's all before the board?
Well, it was actually sent in 3 weeks late, but we let him make his presentation tonight so that they heard it. And if we hold it over till next month, the board members will have the opportunity to review those documents also. And then it gets to the issue of, whether permeable pavers are part of lot coverage or not. So that's fine. We did hear from him tonight. We know his position. We appreciate his, professional opinion on it. He's I guess he's been a Unilock representative for, what did he say, 25 years?
Sorry, I had you muted.
27, just to clarify.
Oh, okay.
I'm okay leaving the hearing open.
I'm okay leaving it open.
prejudice.
Okay. So that
All right.
sounds like that's what the board's going to do. So the hearing remains open and it'll be on the next agenda.
Well, it seems to me that someone has to make a motion to close the public hearing, and then somebody says, no, we're not going to do it.
No, I don't think that's
No,
procedurally.
I don't think that
required.
I've ever seen that done. I think we've polled the board. We know, the board members' positions, and, if you want us to go through that formality, we could go through that formality for you. That'll take a minute.
Well, look, if the applicant is going to take issue with it, then why don't you go ahead and make a motion to keep the public hearing open and put it on for the next available meeting? Make that a motion, and then it's procedurally
Isn't there
unassailable.
Isn't that where we started this conversation 5 minutes?
Well, I didn't think there was going to be any particular issue with it. I was just trying to make a comment
Okay.
on what I thought was the right procedure. But if the applicant is going to take issue with that procedure, let's just do it formally.
Okay.
Excuse me, Dave, before we do that, if a public hearing gets closed, needs to be resubmitted again for mailings.
It's not getting closed, Noreen. I
Okay,
think the board
it's-
is making clear that they're keeping it open. They're just going
Okay.
to now make a motion to hold it open and continue it and have it on the next, on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because if we closed it and reopened, then we'd have to do another set of mailings.
No, we're not going
Right,
to.
no, we're not going to put them through that. So would anybody on the board like to make a motion to carry this public hearing over to the next meeting, which is May 26th, Tuesday night, May 26th?
I'll make a motion to keep this open till May 26th. The public hearing open until May 26th meeting.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Anybody second that motion?
I'll second it. Austin said.
Austin, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll see you next month.
How many people are on the board? Is it 5?
It's 5.
Yes.
And you only had 4 today?
Yes.
So will we have 5 next week, next time?
Chances are not. Our 5th member had a change in work schedule recently because of the COVID-19. He's a EMT responder. So we'll see what happens next month. He may be here, he may not be here. But he's been provided with all the information along, all along.
And this meeting is recorded and of record, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Correct.
Okay. And I can download it onto it's digitally available that can be downloaded. Is that correct?
We will make it so. This is our first meeting. I've recorded it. I'm not sure that I've mastered what to do with it once we end and I close the recording, but the answer is yes. We will figure out a way to get it available.
All right. All right. All right. Well, it's remained open over our objection. I just want to note that for the record.
Okay.
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 Okay. So
Fitchburg.
thank you all. Thank you all for your time and your presentations.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So do we hang up? What do we do next?
If you're all done and you're not, the next
I can kick you out. I think I can kick you
Yeah,
out.
I guess that's the answer because I'm just right-clicking my picture and I'm trying to see. Oh, I can see it. If I hit stop video, then I'm disconnected, right?
I still hear you, but I'm going to kick you out officially,
still
Mr.
here.
Fishberg. No offense.
David?
Oh, no, he's gone. Okay.
David's got to play.
Nope, you're still there. Removed.
You can just do
David?
Okay, now I'm out.
He's out.
I'm
Oh,
out.
no, he's still there. Hold on, he's still there. Remove. There you and
I'm like
stay
a
out.
bad. I'm like a bad.
And stay out.
See, Neil, this is what I mean about this new technology. Not everybody's used to using it yet.
Yeah.
How is it that Mike's window has daylight behind it? And we're all in the dark. That is
I'm on the West
I want
Coast.
to know.
Sun hasn't set yet.
You figured out how to get the virtual background.
David McCartney,
Yes.
don't close me and Saul because we're both going to be involved with Kingsville, okay?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right, so what we have remaining on the agenda tonight is the Kingsville Synagogue and the Verizon application. The next application up, being Eagle View, is now done for tonight. We're going to go into the Kingsville Synagogue request for variance for parking in the front yard.
Yes, and our.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me unmute. Who's? You're done. You already unmuted yourself. So, Mr. Churgan, Mr. Namako, anybody else that needs to be unmuted for this right now to present?
Saul.
So he's unmuted. He's good.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
We still show a Neil on.
Oh, I see a Neil. Yeah. What is that him?
Yeah, and Cynthia Franson's still on. I mean, she can listen to the rest of the meeting.
Okay. I'm removing Neil. And I cannot unmute Miss Francis, so she must have it. She must have herself muted.
Okay.
So we'll leave her for the time being.
And then the only other one that's on here is Scott Olson, the poor man's waiting for Verizon.
Is he, yeah, where is
We'll
he?
be quick.
That's iPad.
Scott's iPad is Scott Olson.
Oh, Scott. Oh, there you
Verizon.
are. Okay.
All he wants is his public hearing sets.
So, okay, so Kingsville.
Okay, so I'm Joseph Churgan. I'm the applicant's attorney, and we did appear before the board previously, and at that time, we did not have a referral letter from the planning board. And I think we started talking about a whole bunch of other things that were important to the board members in trying to understand the project. But now we've gotten the referral letter from the planning board's attorney dated March 10th. I hope that everybody has it, everybody has seen it, and everybody has reviewed it. And it's pretty clear, at least to me, that the real issue that the planning board is asking is the issue regarding a variance for parking in the front yard. And I think that's where we should be confining our discussions for the most part. We'll certainly answer any questions that the board has. We at this point want to just have the public hearing scheduled. I know it's late in the night, I'm sorry, and I appreciate everything you people have been doing. I don't want to belabor it.
I'm very sorry to interrupt. I have to plug my computer in. I'm going to be 30 seconds off screen. My computer's about to die on me.
Okay.
Okay.
The planning board referral letter, I don't have it in front of me. Is it?
Should be in your email.
I know, I've got to go back. I've got to.
I know, I can't get to mine right now. It's not cooperative.
Show you. It's not gonna help. Yeah, that's unfortunate because it clearly, I mean, well, you can have Mr. McCartney tell you if he disagrees with me. I think it makes it pretty clear. The only issue we're really talking about here is whether or not we can have parking in the front yard.
That's correct. The referral letter is dated March 10th. And if you don't have it in front of you, it's in. We got it in an email from Noreen on March 10th at around noon. If you're looking for your email, but yeah, it just it's a few paragraphs and it just makes clear that that's the referral. It's parking in the front yard.
Okay, did we also get a letter from the building department about the parking lot size? Did I see that in an email?
Yeah, there was an email trail with Ben.
They were both in the same email.
I don't have that.
Yeah,
It's not on 310. It's from 410. But the letters, the PDF is from 310.
Yeah.
Check it. Check 410.
Can you share that with us?
Oh, okay.
Can I share it with who?
Well, the app, myself,
We didn't see it.
Joe, we don't have any information from the building inspector. What you're looking at right now, we don't have.
I have the letter to the planning board from Ben, and I have the ANT to ZBA from March 10th.
Can you share that letter on screen?
Yeah, let me get it open.
I can't seem to find it.
Yeah, we don't have that letter. We have the planning board attorney's letter, but we don't have the building department's letter.
Sick. Oh, actually, sorry. I don't have a building department letter. I have a letter from the. I have the email from the building department to the applicant.
Directly to the applicant or to me or David?
I think it was to Saul. Let me take a look. Hold on. My email is doing something funny right now.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing any email or letter from the building department. I don't recall seeing that. I think what we got was a communication maybe from Mr. Churgan or from somebody on behalf of the applicant. I think maybe it was Mr. You, David, addressing that issue.
Can I share my screen, I guess? I can.
Well, I mean, the parking space sizes are not an issue, and the parking layout is not an issue. The building department.
Right, that's the March 10th letter. We all
This is
have
the
that.
planning board letter.
Yeah, we have that.
We have that.
Okay.
Yeah, and like to frame the issue, what we were talking about, I believe Chairman Murphy had brought up, if it was you, was there another variance that may be required in regard to the way you've configured and sized the parking there in terms of the width of the spaces and in terms of stacking a space behind another one? That's my recollection of what the issue was.
That's correct.
And I saw something back from, not from Ben, but I think from David Namatko, giving the dimensions, the dimensions of the width, that the width was in compliance.
Yeah,
with the
correct.
code. I think you cited a code section.
Correct.
Am I
So
right?
the town code for 57-51K says that accessory parking areas shall be marked off into parking spaces, each with a minimum width of 9 feet and a minimum length of 18 feet. So we sized it accordingly. So as far as the dimensions of the parking space itself, we followed code specifications.
Okay, I thought I recalled seeing it, some of the spaces being only 8 feet wide on your original plan. I don't know if you updated the plan. Let me see.
We all show 9 feet. There's a.
Yes.
Yeah, they all show 9 feet. I'm looking at the plan right now.
I'm looking at a plan also dated 1/31/18, last revised 1/17/20 for the ZBA submission. And in the detail of the parking lot, it shows parking spaces being 8 and 9 feet wide.
Are you referring to that 8-foot dimension on the if you're looking at the plan on the right side?
Yes.
That dimension is to the edge of the existing paver area.
Oh, well.
If you look,
okay,
if you
yeah,
look very closely, the edge of the arrow shows to the existing edge of the paver area, but we extend that 1 foot more for the parking space in the proposed.
I see that now, yes.
We tried to overlay it as best we could to try and show the difference between, you know, existing and proposed in this layout. So that extra dotted hatch area adds 8 feet at the edge of, you know, to make it 9. It'll just be added on to the paver area.
Okay. Yeah, because it struck me funny that some were 8 and some were 9. I thought that was, you ran out of room or something.
Yeah, I can see how that gets confusing, but yeah, they're all 9 spaces, that's for sure.
Okay.
And that dimension delineates or demarcates the parking that was originally proposed and approved in John Dragon's survey, you know, from 2005. So in 2005, he provided a certified survey that showed parking in the front, and we oriented our parking in association with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The planning board referral letter, what is it stating? I don't have it in front of me.
He put it on the screen just a few minutes ago, Mr.
I was
Seidel.
trying to find it on my screen.
You can pop it up again. You could read it. You know.
Well,
I might be able to.
What's
Two
it?
paragraphs.
I could quickly summarize it.
Yeah, if you could.
It just says that the application seeks approval of a site plan before the planning board to convert a basement of a single-family residence to a gathering place. It gives the square footage and the zoning, and it says that because the applicant seeks to have parking located in the front yard, the planning board has referred this matter to you, the zoning board, for consideration of an area variance. And then it goes through. The zoning code provides parking and loading in spaces, and it cites the town code section for parking. And then it says the supplementary regulations require accessory parking areas to comply with the town code. It cites the section. And then it says relevant here, town code 57-38 provides in any district, no private garage or other accessory building or parking area shall be within a required front yard, except for provided in a couple other sections. And then it says, although special use standards applicable to gathering spaces require the applicant to first maximize on-site parking spaces, they do not specifically modify other parking requirements in the code, such as the requirement that parking areas not be located within a required front yard. As a result, the new parking area for Kingsville Synagogue that is in the required front yard would require an area variance unless moved. The planning board's classified it as an unlisted action and issued a neg deck in April of 2019. The planning board will want an opportunity to weigh in on the variance application after further discussion. I'm not sure necessarily what that means, but or how we would do that, but that's what the letter says.
Well, wasn't there a question of one of the questions originally was the approval, like there's currently parking in the front yard, and there was a question of was that approved or not?
Yeah.
Right, that's correct, Pete. That was the basis of the question, was whether or not that approval that showed, or that the parking that shows on the Dragon survey map, whether that was approved or it was just a survey after the fact that showed where the parking was. You know, the question was what was on the application planning department. And the other question I think we asked was about seeing the subdivision map, which the applicants have not been able to get a hold of.
Right, which should be in the county clerk's office. I don't know. I've not done any searching specifically for subdivision maps in county clerk's office during this COVID-19.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's next to impossible to get at the moment, but it would be available publicly. I think the only other thing that was out there is possibly, I believe my recollection is that there was an argument that there was a survey. I think that was the Dragon or Dragon. How do you say it? Dragon survey, and that there was a certificate of occupancy issued in connection with that or after that. And I think one of the things the board was asking for was, does anyone have a copy of that certificate of occupancy?
I just emailed it to you, David.
What's that?
I just emailed you a CO that Ben had sent me.
Oh, okay.
Could you share that with us?
I can't share,
I might be able to.
or I don't know how.
Can you just tell us the date? The date?
Yeah,
would be
let me
helpful.
see. Here, hold on. I can share it. Just give me a second to figure it out. I just got to download it, save it in a
Yeah.
spot that I could find it, and then call it up, and then I can share it.
Because I got locked out of the meeting when I was doing the email.
Yeah. So,
I don't want to touch any more buttons.
Mike's window, he still has daylight at his place. It's a
Sun always shines here on my side of town.
Yeah, he's clearly not in Monroe.
I'm
Come
moving
on.
over there. It's dark here.
Yeah. It's on the other side of the mountain.
And how does everybody have short hair? I haven't had it
Oh,
in
please.
2 weeks. 2 months. My hair is I'm looking at everybody, and all of you are tailored and groomed. What's
He's
going on?
actually proactive.
You know what
He
it
got a
is, David?
haircut
You
right
have
before
hair.
it
Most of
started.
us do not.
Knowing this would happen, I got a haircut.
Good for you. That's fantastic. I didn't.
Were you able to get it, Dave?
yeah, I'm just getting there. I almost have it. Okay, now. Let's see. Does anybody see anything?
We see a black
black spot.
Yeah, me
Over
too. I
the
don't
letter.
understand why. Let me
Yeah, you
let
got
me try it again. I'm not sure what happened there. 'Cause it's-
It was behind your screen there, I think.
yeah, I've got it up on my screen, and
When you do screen share, you get a choice of which of your screens you want to share. So you have to pick the open screen that has your document in it.
I got it. This should do it. You see that now?
There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that's
That's after. The map's dated in 05.
Yeah, the map's dated September 5th, 2005, and this CO is 5/23/2007.
Right, that's the one that Ben Maldonado sent me that they have on record.
what was the what was the purpose of the survey in 05, the Dragon survey? Do we know?
It says here in the bottom right-hand corner, final house location survey dash lot number 2 and then map number. So that's after the construction of the house. And, you know, you would think it
It's also certified to the owner and to the insurance company. It's a certified survey.
15, 2005, last revised April 17, 2007.
yeah, so that even jives with that date perfectly, even better.
Yeah, because probably the first draft of the map was the plot plan to get the construction on the lot, and then the last revised was the final, lot location plan, showing where the house was built and the driveways. All right, so that I think, given the proximity of the dates, we can say that the building inspector did see the Dragon map, and that was part of the basis for the certificate of occupancy.
And the parking in the front yard.
I guess that's, look, we could talk about that. I mean, I would, if you want to split hairs, the CO talks about the building, but I don't know. The point is, it temporally matches up to what you said at the last meeting.
Yep.
So I guess the real question before the board right now is simply, is there anything else that you want to have the applicant come forward with at the public hearing? I would suggest that you open the public, like you set the public hearing for next month and then open it. And if there's anything else you want the applicant to address in the meantime, give him a heads up on that issue now so that they can be ready to get you what you need for next month. That's my suggestion.
I agree.
We had a list of 6 items that we were asking for the last time. They provided most everything with the exception of the file subdivision map from 2003. You know, if it's possible to get that to us before the next meeting, that would be great.
If the Orange County Clerk's Office is amenable to providing it, I will make efforts to get it.
Thank you.
Great. All right, let's set the public hearing.
Yeah, okay.
Does it have to be on the same night as the one right before us? That was a joke.
We'll let you go first.
That's true. Actually, Mike is right. That's true, because it'll be a new public hearing. We could go first.
Good.
You want a motion?
Yeah, would anybody like to make a motion to set this project for a public hearing on the night of May 26th, I believe it is?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to set a public hearing for the Kingsville Synagogue for the next meeting.
I second the motion. Kevin Scully.
Thank you, Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
No,
Thank you very much for your time. I know it's late.
Thank you.
Just one reminder, Noreen, if you could send us a copy of that C of O tomorrow, email it to us.
Sure, when I figure out why I got locked out of everything. No problem, because right now I'm locked out of the email.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye-bye, guys.
Good night,
Okay.
everyone.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
You too.
Good night.
Those keep count computers, Noreen.
And then there was only Scott left.
He's officially unmuted.
Good evening.
You're removed from Zoom purgatory.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that I was on mute, so I was just kind of scribbling away.
Loudly.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to report that what I heard in the developments that I know of, and what I understand we're on for today. The applicant is really looking to get on for a public hearing and get that scheduled. We've had some delays for, COVID related and otherwise. But the board has now obtained the expert, has hired the expert at Cityscape, and the applicant did what they were asked to do, which is to provide the escrow for that. They provided it. That money cleared and was sent to the expert. The expert, I heard from today that they are working diligently on it as we speak. They've gotten what they need. They have received they're aware of the use variance standards that for the ZBA review as separate and distinct from any standards that might otherwise be separately applicable for a planning board review. They're going to be looking at it from a zoning standpoint. Their team has it. They're looking at it. They expect to have something reviewed, at least in, I'll call it draft, or be ready by the end of this week or early next. So that should be ready for the board's review in advance of a public hearing, if you see fit to set it for the next month. And I think that's where we're at. My recommendation is to go ahead and set the public hearing ASAP and get that on board for next month. And then hopefully I'll keep on the expert, and we'll have something for the board to consider and review in advance of the next meeting, certainly, and to discuss with the applicant at the next meeting, at the hearing.
Okay, thank you for that update, David. And yeah, my main concern was I know we've been trying to get the contract in place and have the Cityscapes do their review of the application, and then the next step was for us to see that review before we go to the public hearing, so that we know what their opinion is of the matter. So it sounds like all of that is lined up to be done on time, and also give the board members a chance to read through their findings and ask a few questions at the meeting. Now, Cityscape will, I guess it'd be easy for them to attend the public meeting if we're doing it through Zoom again, right?
Seems much easier now under these circumstances, ironically.
Yeah. So that kind of worked out.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess one of the things that I had asked for earlier in the process was a copy of the town zoning map showing the overlay district for cell towers. And I don't think we ever got that. And I don't know, that town hall is hoping that we could try to find it through there. Because that's part of it. Apparently, this is outside of the cell tower overlay district, but I haven't even seen the district map, so I can't even opine on that correctly.
So I know that our engineer provided some information, and I thought we included the map expert with our submission. And on that issue, it's kind of strange, this overlay district. It seems like the overlay district only includes very tiny sections of town where there are existing towers. And I'll double check, but our engineer submitted additional information back in the middle of March. I thought that included.
In the middle of March. Okay, maybe I didn't see that.
I'll double. I know he addressed it.
Hard copy submittal that came in January.
Yeah.
I have a hard copy of what came in March because we were in the midst of all this.
We also, and we also, I think, provided that via emails. I can certainly do that again.
Yes, anything that was done in March is probably in my office if it was only a hard copy. But I thought Scott had sent it in email, which I forwarded out to everybody.
I definitely, I remember your email, Noreen, and we did submit that email in electronic form also from the March 11th.
Unfortunately, like I said, I'm locked out of my email. I don't know what I did. I can look in the morning, but right now I can't do anything.
So then in that March submittal, we should have a copy of the town overlay district.
I'm looking for that and the RF. My Adobe works weird. If I have something open too long, it blanks everything out for some reason. So you have to, but what I'll do is I will double check it.
Okay. So that was one question. The other question I had is, in terms of alternative locations, if this is going to be in a district where it's not allowed and it's standing right next to a water tower, is there any particular reason why it can't be situated on top of the water tower so that we're not adding another huge structure out there?
Yeah, and there is, and we submitted something further by the construction manager. It's a letter. They basically provide 3 reasons. Technically, yes, it can probably be put on the water tank, and we've been doing it in the past, and we have done it. The problem is with that experience, we've learned that it's not a recommended preference for us. It's not cost effective for us. It's going to cost us 3 times as much just to do that installation. And then what we're finding now is water tanks need maintenance. And every time they have to be maintained and painted, whatever they do, they ask us to take our antennas off. And we have to put up a temporary structure. And that's an additional cost to us. What we're proposing here is a small cell facility. It is cost-wise, it's next to nothing compared to like a new tower. It is a utility pole, but I mean, the tower itself, the pole is like an $8,000, improvement. Whereas we're looking at 50 grand, give or take, ultimately for a water tank. So we have that issue, cost effectiveness. Again, the guy's name is Joe Kelly. He provided that letter. You probably don't have it.
I saw the letter.
I've got it. I'm trying to forward it to everybody, but I'm having difficulty as well.
It was pretty in-depth on why it's not cost effective.
Yeah. So, but technically, yes, it can go on there, but it's something that we do our best to try to avoid because we have access issues at times too. If the water people say, well, you can't get out onto the tank to do this, because we're doing that, and then we can have an antenna down. That's in summary why they don't like to be on those tanks.
Okay. The other question I have in looking at the site plans that were provided in the original submittal is the site plans don't show the location of the water lines leading to the water tower. So just for the sake of knowing where those lines are so that your tower doesn't need to be relocated, if those lines could be added to that map, that would be helpful.
Okay, I'll ask our surveyor folks. I'm sure they've had information to that effect in order to locate it originally, because they don't like to locate it, get approvals, and then realize, oh, we're in the wrong spot.
Right, because
So,
there could be 2 sets of pipes going up to that tower. There could be valve pits up there, meter pits, all kinds of things that, are not necessarily shown here. So just to make sure that what you're proposing is not in conflict with any of the existing infrastructure. And the Village of Harriman could have all those as-built maps for that structure. I'm looking at sheet C3 in your set, which is the largest scale map, and it doesn't show, again, any underground utility line locations. Shows
no, it doesn't. So I'll ask our surveyor.
Okay.
It's my understanding they have that information prior to doing these plans. So I'll confirm that, and hopefully we'll be able to add that to the plan set.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it.
Do any of the members of the board have any other questions?
What is our, what do we propose, what do we, what are we considering right now? We want to either consider opening this for a public hearing or?
Yes, that's what the applicant's request is to schedule this for a public hearing. We're hoping that we receive our consultant's report in the next couple of weeks so that we all have time to look at that before the meeting on May 26th. So, we have a full month for that to happen. The contract is in place for our consultant to do the work. David had informed us that he's pushing them to get it done quickly so that we have something to look at.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're on it. They told me today that they're on it.
Okay, good.
If I could just add one quick thing. We came to you before the coronavirus even started.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a need. We have a capacity issue. We have a coverage issue. I was talking to the RF performance people a few weeks ago, and they were saying what's happening with this site, because this is almost our #1 site in the state. They said we are getting killed with so many people now working at home, that the capacity issues that we had previous to that, they're just exponentially growing. And this site, he said, you're killing me. You gotta, you gotta try to work through. I said, listen, it's a pandemic. We're doing our best we can. But he just wanted me to reiterate that to the board, that the need that we had before is even that much greater now.
Okay. It's understandable. I know, we see it here too. The work we're doing, that, sometimes there's just too much traffic on your home server and you can't get the bandwidth you need to get your documents across. It's tough.
Yeah.
And if, this cell site is needed and helps alleviate that kind of traffic jam on the telecommunications lines, that's a good thing. I guess that's, I have no further questions. Anybody else on the board?
No.
No.
All good. I'll entertain a motion to set this matter for a public hearing on May 26th.
I make a motion to have a public hearing on May 26th for this matter.
Thank you, Kevin.
Second the motion, Austin side.
Thank you, Austin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
That wraps us up for tonight.
We did
And
it.
Scott, because you had to sit through everything, I'll make you the first public hearing next month.
Oh, thank you, Doreen. You're the best.
So you won't have to listen to Eagle View anymore.
Okay, well, that was interesting.
Gosh, you might think so.
As an outsider, I can say that.
Noreen, quick question to you, being you're the person on the inside the most here.
Yep.
What's the town's outlook for opening up and holding meetings in town hall? Is that still?
As of right now, the last I heard, it is still November 5th, November. Oh my God.
Don't say
Please,
that.
I'll be crying. May 15th, but it all depends on, he goes by what the governor and everybody says.
Oh, okay. So if the governor says, well, I guess that presents us with a bit of a conundrum, because if we're going to advertise this for a public hearing, how do we advertise the location? Do we advertise it for both locations?
Well, that's what I will have to find out, because I will technically, hold on, I got to get a calendar. For the May 26th, I have to have it in the paper by May 19th, and they need to send out the notices by May 16th. So it would be close, but I would think that the decision would be made before May 15th if we're returning to work that Monday.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether he's gonna, excuse me. I'm not sick, it's allergies, I swear. I'm not sure if he's gonna be opening up to the public for meetings right away anyway.
Yeah, and that's a question I posed to the board members also. I mean, did you find that tonight's meeting went smoothly enough and we could do this at least one more time if need be?
Yeah, I want to work from home forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not an issue.
I'll make a motion to have Zoom meetings every night.
I think next month, I'm pretty sure next month is gonna be a Zoom meeting. If anything, the June meeting might be the first one back, because they're gonna be letting people go back to work in stages. And one of the stages could be that only town hall is half staff, so I'm gonna work half my time at home and half in the office. So they're not gonna want large gatherings. So we might go to the boardroom, but we wouldn't have it open to the public.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if that's the case, I would just assume have it done by Zoom anyway, because how do you engage the public if they're not, communicating with us?
Well, it would be Zoom, but we would be in the boardroom
located.
and they would be
Online?
video conference.
Yeah,
That's not particularly helpful, though. I mean,
I don't know. I think at this,
I think, May, we stick with Zoom. I
Yeah.
think it's only
I have
wise
a
because you're
feeling
gonna have
that's
members
how
of the
they're
public
going.
that aren't gonna want to come even if you were opened up. Of course, I'm not just saying that because it saves me a 35-minute drive up to the meeting,
Yeah, like
and our
right
computers
now, you wouldn't get home till 11 right now, Mike.
maybe 40, actually more than 35.
Hey, just
Hour and a half here.
Well, yeah.
Ah,
notifications need to be sent out to who? Like what,
anybody within 300 feet of that location.
is there anybody in 300 feet of that? It's like a town.
That's a condominium
No, you're right.
complex right there.
The condos are right there.
yeah, the townhomes there.
Got it. Okay.
So whatever the assessor's office gives me,
Yeah,
or the radius is what I have to get to Scott.
got it.
okay.
Okay.
I think that's our decision is, for the May meeting, we'll continue on with the Zoom. This went smooth enough, and by next month, we're pros at it, right? Because we've done it once before.
Yeah. I thought this went well.
Yeah.
So, Scott, thank you for your patience. It was a long time to wait for about a 15-minute, at best.
Hey, that's okay. I could have had to have driven there and driven back home.
Right.
So this is actually a benefit.
Fair point.
And I think this also helps us out next month because our consulting is located a long distance away. And we would have had to pay for all those additional travel expenses. And if we conduct a meeting this way, that's a savings.
That
I
makes
think our
sense.
computers being next to each other would cause feedback as well.
What, Kevin?
I think the audio on our computers, if we were located in the senior center and we all had our computers going on Zoom, that could cause feedback and we would have audio problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Everybody's computer would be picking up the other person's
Yep.
speakers. Be an echo chamber.
All right. So we're gonna call it a night.
Sounds good. Motion to close the meeting?
I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
Thank you, Peters.
Second motion, Kevin Scully.
Thank you, Kevin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you
Okay.
for your participation tonight, guys, and hanging in there.
Well done, everybody.
I try to get some sleep with all that light.
I'm going out for a walk now.
I'll see you guys. Thanks a lot. Good night,
All
Norrie.
right, so long. I'm gonna stop the recording now.